Acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people and pay our respect to those past and present. As part of this acknowledgement, we are pleased to display this beautiful mural, Song of the Salish Sea, created by artists Nick and Kendall Mann. Thank you to the Arts Commission for bringing this mural to our attention. Thank you, City Council, for approving its purchase. And thank you to Tom Wade of our staff for installing it. Tonight, our invocation will be led by Pastor David Parker of the First United Methodist Church. If we could all please stand for the prayer.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, citizens. Would you please pause and join with me in prayer? Gracious and loving God, you are our guardian, governor, and guide. So we pause tonight to express gratitude for the past and hope for our future. We count it a privilege to live in this beautiful and bountiful land, the sacred and the unceded land of the coastal Salish tribal peoples. May their heritage, as well as our Dutch heritage, together inform our values and shape our stewardship of this homeland and of our city. God, gather us tonight as elected leaders, as citizens and constituents, as neighbors, advocates, community leaders, and friends. Strengthen us through the contributions of our diverse backgrounds and unite us in our common cause as citizens. Grant us tonight a wise convergence of our hearts and minds this evening through the sometimes difficult journey of robust and diverse reflections. Help us to convey our reflections in a way that are civil, respectful, and constructive to our many community conversations. And may they refine and strengthen the outcomes that come from this chamber tonight and in the nights ahead. God, I ask heaven's blessing as always and favor to be poured out upon our mayor, upon our council members, our city hall servants, our police and fire departments, and especially mindful and thinking tonight of officers Mel Lomal and Ron Esparza, whom we are here to honor tonight for their storied and devoted service to the security and the safety of our community. Bless and also watch over our schools, our businesses, and all of our nonprofit partners. We are so very grateful for the opportunities as well as the challenges that come from the gift of our democratic and civic life. And so may we be good stewards of these times, O God, and of these resources, as together we seek to enhance and empower our city to achieve a greater level of thriving for all people. And so let your favor, justice, and blessing come upon us and your city. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and Facebook and will be broadcast on cable channel 10 HD 1090 following the meeting. Attendees are participating in person and via teleconference. Guests that are included in staff presentations will be excused at the conclusion of the agenda item as appropriate. City Clerk, I would ask you to take roll, but I can see that everyone's present, so we're good to go. Thank you, Julie. With that, I would, are there any suggested changes to the agenda, consent agenda as presented? Oh, I thought we did, I'm sorry. Did I skip over it?
Yep.
Approval of the agenda, I'm sorry, I skipped right over it. Are there any suggested changes to the agenda? You had a question about D.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you for reminding me. I have a question about consent agenda item D. So if we could pull that, and then when we get to the consent agenda, I will.
Okay. So, but as far as the agenda itself goes, there are no changes to the regular agenda for the meeting, right?
I don't believe so. No.
Okay. Hearing none, then I would approve the agenda. There are no, we'll approve the agenda as presented, and we'll move on to honors and recognition, which is next on the schedule. We have two recognitions.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Chief Slowick, Police Department, it is my pleasure to recognize two of our officers, Officer Marvin Lolema and Officer Ronald Esparza, who are both retiring at the end of the month. So first, if I can get Officer Lolema. So Officer Lolema is being recognized for a Meritorious Service Award. And the award reads, Officer Marvin Lolema is recognized for his unwavering dedication and commitment during his 25 years as a police officer serving the Oak Harbor community. Throughout his distinguished career, Officer Lolema has consistently excelled as a proactive police officer and demonstrated exceptional acumen, particularly in the realm of DUI arrests and traffic enforcement activities. His commitment to maintaining the safety and well-being of the community has been truly commendable, setting a high standard for his colleagues and contributing significantly to the overall effectiveness of the department and improving traffic safety in our community. Officer Lolema's proactive approach in the field has been a cornerstone of his service, reflecting a tireless commitment to crime prevention and public safety. His personable demeanor and ability to lead from the front, coupled with his extensive experience, has not only elevated the department's performance, but also fostered a sense of security within the Oak Harbor community. The Meritorious Service Award stands as a testament to Officer Marvin Lolema's exceptional contributions and lasting impact on the safety and welfare of the residents he has served over the past 2.5 decades. Officer Marvin Lolema is hereby awarded the Oak Harbor Police Department Meritorious Service Award. We'll let this thing go. We'll just keep clapping.
Yeah. We'll let, all right, perfect. Need some help there, Chief?
You're good.
All right, buddy.
So really quick, Officer Lolema is more than just this award. Throughout his time here, he has, he's a field training officer. He's been in a proactive position. He's been a traffic officer. He's been many different facets of the department. And one thing is that he has led many times the amount of traffic stops, DUI arrests, and just that proactive activity. He's going to be dearly missed. He is a leader at the department, and we really appreciate him. And you know, he has left a very good impression on our younger officers, and we're really thankful for that. So with that, here's the award.
Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it.
You want to say something?
Well, if everybody knows me, it's Mel. Council members, mayor, citizens, just real briefly, over the years, it's been an honor and a privilege to serve. The last few years, you've heard defund the police, defund the police. I am happy to say it's been an honor to serve a community where I have never heard that, and it's never come across anyone that I've talked to or dealt with. Again, it's been an honor and a privilege to serve this community. Thank you.
Okay, next, if I can have Officer Ron Esparza to the podium, please. And first, let me just say, it's not only my pleasure to recognize Officer Esparza, it's also his birthday today, so. All right, I'll be hearing about that. So Officer Esparza is completing 20 years of service, and he is also receiving the Meritorious Service Award. The award reads, Officer Ronald Esparza is recognized for his exceptional dedication and unwavering commitment to the Oak Harbor community. Throughout his distinguished 20 years of service as a police officer, Officer Esparza's contributions have been instrumental in fostering a safe and more inclusive environment. earning him the respect and gratitude of the community he served. Starting his career as a corrections officer in the Oak Harbor Jail, Officer Esparza was often a calm presence, able to de-escalate aggravated and impaired individuals during the arrest booking process, ensuring all parties were treated with dignity and respect. A true pioneer in community policing, Officer Esparza's legacy includes being the founding police officer on the co-responder team, a community partnership with Island County Human Services and the Oak Harbor Police Department. His innovative approach, combining law enforcement with compassionate intervention, has significantly impacted the well-being of the addicted, vulnerable, and unhoused populations in our community. Officer Esparza's tireless efforts, marked by empathy and understanding, exemplify the highest standards of public service and reflect a deep commitment to creating a community where everyone feels valued and protected. Officer Esparza is hereby awarded the Oak Harbor Police Department Meritorious Service Award. Give me two, everybody. I just like to add really quick, Officer Esparza and I, we started 6 days apart. And so this guy's been my running mate through the department. I'm getting emotional thinking about him leaving. Both these officers are a true, the community's going to be missing out on both these officers' presence. However, they have really provided some leadership with our younger officers, and I'm very hopeful and excited to see what our new officers will bring us. Both of them have served honorably, and I couldn't have imagined my career without this guy next to me. So,
talk about emotional. So I just want to say thank you to the city of Oak Harbor for giving me the opportunity to do what I've done for the last 20 years. It's been an honor and a privilege. It's going to be sad to go, but I'm not going anywhere. It's hard, but it's time. And I appreciate it once again to the city and the community for giving me the opportunity to do what I've been able to do for the last 20 years. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Ron.
So we're going to take a 5-minute recess to take pictures and congratulate, and then we'll come back. All right, we are going to move on to citizen comment period. Citizens may comment on consent agenda items or subjects of interest not listed on the agenda at this time. Citizens will have the opportunity to comment on the remaining agenda items during the meeting as appropriate. Citizens can also visit our website prior to our meetings for methods to submit public comment or contact the city clerk, Julie Nestor, by phone or email. When submitting comments, please include your name and address. Public comments sent anonymously will be shared with the mayor and council but will not be displayed. We received 3 new public comments since our last regular meeting. 2 of the comments pertain to agenda item 9A, which is the Metropolitan Park District, and will be displayed with that item on the agenda. The other comment is regarding a potential development downtown and is displayed now. All right. Are there any members of the public present who wish to speak to items not listed on the agenda or on the consent agenda? If so, the clerk will call your name in order in which you signed in to speak.
Mayor, we have many people that signed in to speak. Only one is signed in to speak for an item that is not on the agenda, and that is Nolan Saltonstall, which is to speak regarding the recreation center.
Great. So, are we starting with Nolan then? Okay. Yes.
Well, hello, I'm Nolan Saltonstall of Oak Harbor. Hello again, council. I just wanted to thank you guys for the effort you've put into there's a lot more people here than usual. Hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know, I am part of the Mr. Oak Harbor Scholarship Organization. We had our pageant, or whatever you call it, a couple months ago, and we chose a service project, and that project was advocating for a community rec center in Oak Harbor because we don't really have anything like that. And so we took it to city council, and they requested funds from the state, which was in session last month, and they got back from them. And we have funds approved for a feasibility study, which is a really, empirical look into the feasibility of having a community rec center in our town. And so that's a huge first step, and so I want to thank you guys for accommodating us, helping us out. I mean, we had meetings with you guys. It was great. And the second thing I want to talk about is what we're doing, because our service project is advocacy, and we need to work on that. So what I've done so far is we've distributed pamphlets to local businesses. We hit 130 of those, and I did the email. And actually, during the pageant for the Miss Oak Harbor, there was a delay, so I got to talk to everybody there, and that was fun. But what I think we're going to do moving forward is we're going to aim for sort of a more broad approach to getting the word out, because when I was going around town passing out pamphlets to local businesses, it was hard for them to kind of see what it was, because it was a page of words, text blocks. You know how it goes. You skim it. You don't read all of it. And some of them thought I was turning in a resume because I'm not an adult. So what we're probably going to do is posters or something. We have our Mod Pizza date on April 11th. You all should go to that, by the way. It goes to a good cause. And putting up posters in local businesses just so people see community rec center. And they think that and they know about it, and it's just in their head. So, and that would probably spawn word of mouth, which I think is the most powerful thing in a community like ours, especially. I've seen some stuff on social media that speaks to it. And so really the best thing any of you can do is just say, hey, I heard about this community center. It's a cool idea. You guys should talk about it. So that's really what we're probably going to aim doing. Big message, and see how many people we can reach. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Nolan.
Mayor, we have 3 people who signed up to speak to an item that was formerly on our agenda and was removed, so they may come and speak at this time. They are all wishing to speak regarding the softball fields. The first is Kim Ford.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Ford, lifelong resident of Oak Harbor. I wanted to address the VP softball fields. I don't know if you guys are aware, but the city of Oak Harbor does have 3 softball fields at the Volunteer Park grounds. Formerly on the agenda was a motion to discuss renovations for Windjammer Park baseball fields. I have the honor of coaching my daughter in Little League softball for the last couple of years on the same softball fields that I played on back in the 90s. Sadly, these fields are in roughly the same condition that they were in the 90s. Over the last few years, I've been frustrated with what I've heard from who's responsible for managing the maintenance of these fields. Well, fields 1 and 2 are on grounds owned by Oak Harbor School District. I understand that it is the responsibility per the lease that Oak Harbor City would manage those fields. Sadly, these fields are not kept up. There's frequently graffiti, vulgarities painted on the boards in the outfield that our girls play on. The ground that they work on is compacted. It is barely playable. I have to coach my girls and face the questions they ask me as to why don't they get fields as the same condition that the boys play on. When we travel to other leagues in Coopville, in South Whidbey, Anacortes, Burlington, they see the fields the softball players in other neighboring communities those girls play on, and then come home to the fields that they play on, they feel less than. I don't want to take away from the boys, but I wanted to advocate for the fields that our girls play on, as I feel strongly that our girls are equally as deserving as our boys to have playable fields. And it's quite frustrating hearing from the Little League board discussions that are possibly had with the entities that are to manage these fields, and what seems to be a lot of finger pointing as to who should be managing these fields. While I may expect that type of behavior from my children, I don't expect, and I cannot tolerate that type of behavior from those in our governing body. So I would really advocate that we would address who maintains VP1 and VP2. That's all.
Thank you.
Next is Clara Ford.
My name's Clara Ford, and I came here today even though I knew my mom was going to address it, because I thought you would need to hear it from someone who plays on those fields every spring, and those fields are not the safest. There are lots of bumps and rocks all over, so when there's a grounder or a ball hits the ground, there's a very large chance that it will hit you and it will hurt. The safety of those fields is very poor, and it's hard to play there. And you guys are keeping the baseball fields in a very good condition, but the softball fields are in a very poor condition. That's all.
Thank you, Clara.
Mayor, next is Emily Ford.
Okay, so I am Emily Ford, and much like my mother and little sister were just talking about, the softball fields are in terrible condition. Like, I go out there and I help my dad and my mom coach on occasion, and I've tried sliding on that ground. It hurts a lot. Like, I did it once and I had a bruise like probably twice the size of a softball on my hip. And it's terrible because these girls are out here every season. They're sliding multiple times every game. And it's really rough to see because I've been down to the baseball fields too, and they are in really nice condition compared to the softball fields. And it's a little bit unfair as to how well those baseball fields are maintained compared to the softball fields. I really do think that something should be done about it, whether that be hiring somebody else to take care of those fields or enforce the taking care of them by people that are supposed to. That's all.
Thank you.
Mayor, that concludes those that had signed up to speak. You may request others.
Great, thank you. Let me find my place. Are there any members of the public present here who wish to add any additional comments to things that have not signed up to speak for the meeting today? Yes, sir. Step forward. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mukunda Krishna Tyson. You can call me Ty. That's what everybody does since I've been in the military. I'm a member of the Oak Harbor community for 20 years now. I know that's not long compared to many people that are here, but it's how long I've been here. I decided to settle here after 26 years in the Navy, raised my family here, and I'm here to talk specifically about Agenda Item 9 Alpha, the request for support for resolution for Metro Park District.
Mr. Tyson,
Yes.
we will have public comment for agenda items, for items on the agenda at the time of those
Okay.
agenda items.
Okay.
Yeah, so we'll give you an opportunity to speak when we are at that item. This was, yeah. This was just an open invitation for items that weren't
Okay, I
on the
just hadn't
agenda.
signed up yet.
Oh,
I-
okay.
Got it right as everybody came in.
Time that wish to speak about items that are not on the agenda. All right. Hearing no one else who wishes to speak at this time, we'll close public comment and we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any objections or changes to the consent agenda as presented? Yes, Councilmember Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull item 4C for discussion.
Mayor Pro Tem Heisen.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull item 4D for discussion.
All right, 4C and 4D. I would entertain a motion to pull those items from the consent agenda.
I move that we pull items 4C and 4D from the consent agenda.
Second.
Any other discussion on that? All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, so we will move items 4C and 4D. And now I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as revised, removing items 4C and 4D. No objections, okay, so it looks like we will move on with that. All right, moving on to mayor's comments. Yes? What? Oh, sorry, thank you, yes, sorry. All right, so item 4C.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to see, I'm sure Chief Slowick's not, but I'm happy to see the vending machines go back in the parks. I know vandalism has been a problem in the past. I'm happy to see that we've got a vendor stepping up. I just want to say I'd maybe like to see this taken a step further, especially at the marina with the loss of the little store at the marina. You know, having maybe even a snack vending machine there. You know, it's not a big money maker for the city, I get it, but again, it's a service provided, right? You show up down there to go fishing, your kid's coming with you, and you didn't stop at the store for snacks, and there's nothing, right, to grab down there. And so, you know, whether we carry that on to parks, I'm going to leave that up to staff, but, you know, let's face it, it's part of being out in the summer, right, and being able to run to a machine and grab a soda or a snack is just real convenient for folks. And I appreciate you guys putting this out for bid. I know it's been a problem in the past, and I'm happy to see we got a vendor for this one. And, you know, if we could consider the other, that would be great. Thank you.
Any other comments on 4C? All right, yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
I have a question. When I was reviewing this, I was under the impression that the vending contract is just for like maintenance ownership of the existing vending machines, not necessarily adding more. Are we adding more and replacing the ones that we've taken out of the park?
We have Sandra Place here, who is our procurement
thank you,
staffer, and
Sandra.
she can speak to that.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Mayor Pro Tem Heisen, we are totally open if they would like to put their machines back in the parks and the marina, and we will surely encourage them to. But the existing one is for the existing machines already in place. But that does not prohibit them from trying it again, because they did pull the machines because of vandalism, and it's their right to do that as the vendor.
Yeah, I've been saying for years, like having a machine at the marina for all the weekend activities would be great.
So we
I
will
would definitely
encourage
encourage the
We
vendor
will do
to
that.
consider putting out more.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any other comments or questions on item 4C from the agenda? All right, item 4D.
Thank you, Mayor. The Lagoon dock, I was going over the scope of work for this contract, and I'm wondering how difficult would it be to run power out to that dock? I think that because there's an existing, essentially amphitheater, for lack of a better word, if we wanted to have a summer concert series, if people could plug in and perform on the dock, people could just sit in the natural amphitheater and watch that performance, but I don't know how difficult it would be to have like a temporary railing, the ability to set something like that up and to run power out there. Is that something we could do in-house? Is that a terrible idea? I would love to
Something
hear
we
your
can definitely
thoughts.
explore. We're going to be bringing Windjammer Park improvements to a workshop at the next council meeting. So that's something that we can look at. As far as the scope of this agreement, the extension with Evans Marine Solutions is just while we're waiting for the completion of the permitting processes. If we were to add in electrical, which isn't part of that scope, we'd have to increase funding. But that's definitely a project that we could take on as a separate project. We had some comment at the last Parks and Recreation Commission meeting asking for additional maybe step-like seating around the lagoon as well. And so there's a lot of interest in making some improvements around there, and I think those all fit pretty well in the Windjammer Improvements Fund, identifying some of those things. Safety lighting and ease of special events were definitely included in that.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we'll have that discussion when it's time to do so. Thank you.
Yes.
I move to approve consent items C and D as presented.
All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, motion passes unanimously. Yes. Now we will move on to mayor's comments. We will start with Councilmember Marshall, who completed his certificate of municipal leadership. We would like to congratulate Councilmember Marshall for his successful completion of the Association of Washington Cities Certificate of Municipal Leadership Training Program. The program recognizes mayors and council members for accomplishing training in 5 competency areas. The training provides city elected officials with the knowledge they need to effectively operate within the law, plan for the future, secure and manage funds, foster strong relationships, and work to build more equitable communities. It is my pleasure to present your certificate to you, Councilmember Marshall. All right, next item is boards and commissions. I would like to thank you to our city council and staff for getting the word out about the volunteer positions to fill on our advisory boards. We have received 12 applications since our last meeting and are in the process of reviewing them now. We are still accepting applications for the Police Community Advisory Board, Civil Service Board, and Historic Preservation Board, as well as the Salary and Commissions Board. So thank you for those that have applied. We're reviewing those applications. We'll make those selections within the next couple of days, and we encourage you to apply for the open positions that we still have. We are still hiring here at the city. The city has opened recruitments for seasonal parks and marina positions, as well as an arborist apprentice. Learn more about these and employment opportunities on our website. And as we continue to count down my first 100 days in office, last week I was joined by Mayor Pro Tem Heisen, our Deputy City Administrator and Finance Director, David Goldman, for the National League of Cities, as well as Councilmembers Marshall and Councilmembers Wittgenstein. We were all week in Washington, D.C. attending this conference. While there, we also met with our legislators, Pentagon officials, and with the Army Corps of Engineers regarding the need for dredging. I am continuing my meetings with city department heads and attended the Island County Board of Health meeting earlier today. So we're making a lot of progress and making a lot of good partnerships with our county and state officials as well as our federal officials. So great job. With that, I will turn it over to our city council and open it up for comments that they may have at this time. Yes, Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Clara and Emily, thanks for coming in today. You know, I had several individuals in the community reach out about Volunteer Park, and it does get challenging with Volunteer Park being owned by the schools and with the city owning Windjammer. I had a conversation with our Park and Rec director, and there is a Windjammer Improvement Fund. There isn't a Volunteer Park Improvement Fund. However, I had discussed with him, my desire to see the girls and the boys treated the same, and I think. Our Park and Rec director is very open to input from council, and you guys came to the right place, and it was heartening to see the graffiti and stuff removed out there at least, but there's obviously a very long ways to go. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoffmeyer. Anyone else with any comments or, yes, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. On that note, I'm wondering if we could put Brian Smith on the spot. As you may or may not know, we recently hired a Parks and Rec director, and so we're still in the process of coming up with a master plan for maintenance, operations, things like that. So I'm curious if we've gotten to the point where there's some kind of a regular schedule for maintenance. I commend you for standing up for yourself, and Mrs. Ford, great job teaching your girls to stick up for themselves. And yeah, Brian, do you have anything to add about the maintenance of the softball fields at Volunteer Park?
Yeah, we do basic maintenance of the park. The fields, like most of our park system, as well as our neighborhood parks, have a ton of deferred maintenance. They all really need to be renovated, especially the safety issues with like lips around the fields. Absolutely agree with everything that was commented on today. We have almost no funding for all these projects. When I came in, we started going after grant funding immediately to try and address some of these. There's a long priority list, and that's a discussion that we're going to have with council when we do the budget is, where do these land in your priorities and what are you willing to fund? We have a few different funds where we can move a few things around and redirect some funding to address things that you feel are a higher priority. These fields, like was mentioned, are owned by the school district. So anything beyond just basic maintenance, like for instance the dugouts, I seriously doubt they're to code. They really need to be removed and rebuilt. Yeah. That's something that we'll have to have a discussion with the school district about allowing us to do that. Just have a memorandum of understanding. We have, like was mentioned, the Windjammer funds allow us a little flexibility to address some of those issues with the ball fields that are there. I would love to take the park improvement funds from the Harbor Heights project and put all that into the athletic fields, all of which need some serious, at least to address the safety issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Thank you for that explanation. That's really helpful. I appreciate you allowing me to put you on the spot like that. And yeah, finally, I want to thank the mayor and staff and our fellow council people for such a great trip to DC last week. It was really informative. It was busy. We met with lots of people, but we learned so much. And I think we're going to be able to put all of the advice and the specific guidance that we got last week to work, and yeah, looking forward to maybe doing some big things. So thank you to staff. You guys were on it, even with the time difference. We were getting emails first thing in the morning. So really appreciate all of the teamwork that went into that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any other questions or comments from council before? Yes, Councilmember Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, first off, I'd like to thank the Fords. Thanks for coming. I do want to point out that, quite frankly, we were struggling with the boys' ball fields last year, right? And the reason they're in the shape they are is I think they put forth a very concerted effort to come to us and inform us of it. And I think several of us met with staff, and we figured out a way to get the right dirt ordered and get that done. And you know, I certainly think your words are not going to fall on deaf ears. We just got to figure out a way to get it done as a community, right? It's an important thing, and I am going to point out just since this is televised, right? It's volunteer park, right? I mean, we as a city can come forward and help guide some work out there. You know, if we can get the bodies together to do it. I mean, I'm not opposed to putting a rake in my hand and having an old-fashioned fix up of those fields. So, keep in touch with us, keep us informed. Unfortunately, my granddaughters aren't playing softball yet. So I'm not, I don't go out there and it does, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come down here. It's impactful. It means so much more than somebody sitting on a typewriter somewhere and sending us an email. And we've been saying this for a long time, and when we see a group like this in the audience, I think some of you saw my reaction when I walked in the room. Exciting, full house. This for us is probably the most exciting times when we get public comment and we get to hear other people's opinions and input. And I'm going to say we don't always do the best job with it, but we try. And the fact that the community takes the time to try certainly helps us, and so we appreciate that. And like I say, just keep us in the loop, please. And then I'd like to also comment about the St. Patrick's Day Parade this weekend. You guys were out of town and missed it, but it was the first St. Patrick's Day without rain that I can remember in years and years and years. And as I was leaving it, several of the road crew were there, putting up the barricades and stuff. And I just want to, thank city staff, right? I mean, for taking their time away from their family on a beautiful, sunny day to come down and do the work it takes to block off the streets and make stuff like that happen, because that's what community is all about, right? Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wiesner. Councilmember Arms.
Thank you for coming, because we don't always know everything that's going on in the community. So when you come and share, it's very helpful for us to kind of look at it and put in our priorities. Also would like to thank Councilmember Hoffmeyer for driving me around in the parade. I appreciate that. Then we went out for a walk. We had a great turnout. It was a beautiful day. We appreciate everybody in the community coming out, because that's what it's all about, where we can meet you and you can meet us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arms. Anyone else that would like to add anything else? Yes, Councilmember Wittgenstein.
Yes, thank you to the Fords and our comments. It's so good to hear what the problems are so that we can actually address them. I haven't played on those fields ever, I don't think, but I've walked through them a few times when I was a teenager, long before a skate park existed, just so you know. But yeah, we'll definitely make it a priority. I think you're hearing that across the board from us today. I think Brian's hearing that as well from us, to definitely figure out a way to address those and our other parks. I think that's what is one of the foundations of building our community and keeping it stronger. So again, thank you for your courage to stand up and speak in front of a group of people. I'd also like to acknowledge the city and the community for the opportunity to go to DC last week, and visit with our Congress and senators, their staff, and learning the different programs that are hopefully going to help take Oak Harbor over the next 50 years, with avenues of finding grant funding and different ways of protecting our assets that we have as a community and keeping them going, and all of that. Wonderful experience. My feet hurt. That's about the only downside to that whole thing. They still hurt. I calculated, I think we walked close to about 45 miles. So, and so it was a wonderful experience to be able to be in that part of the country and meet with other, city officials across the country, right? And making new friends and networking and learning how they do things that maybe hopefully they'll help us learn a little bit different and improve on some of the things that we do. So thank you guys for making that happen.
Thank you, Councilmember Wittgenstein. Anyone else? Mr. Marshall, you're the only one, I think, no? Oh, okay. Nothing else, okay. With that, we'll move on to ordinances and resolutions. And the first item on the agenda is Resolution 2409, adopting a council code of ethics and conduct policy and procedure. Here to introduce that will be interim city administrator Sabrina Combs.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, I'm going to be speaking about the resolution for the Code of Ethics and Conduct Policy. I presented this at workshop. I didn't receive any comments back, so we move forward with bringing this forward tonight. So just for the background to recap, the city attorney reviewed the ethics and conduct with the mayor and council at the special meeting we had at the council retreat. Then, at the request of the mayor and council, we researched it, drafted the policy, and brought it back for the council workshop on February 28th. And then we took input, which we didn't have much, and added that to the final document. And then we created a resolution for that, for this evening. There it goes. So the suggested motion is to approve the resolution 24-09, adopting a city council code of ethics and conduct policy and procedure.
Thank you, Sabrina. At this time, I'd like to turn to our city clerk, Julie Nestor, and confirm that we've had no public comment on this issue.
That's correct, Mayor. We received no comments.
Great, thank you. Then I would like to request any additional public comments from those that are here present this evening. Hearing none, I would call upon council for their questions and comments. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any questions or comments because we've discussed this several times. So I move to adopt Resolution 24-09, adopting a City Council Code of Ethics and Conduct Policy and Procedure.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Are there any additional comments at this time before we take a vote? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move on to contracts and agreements, and on our agenda is professional services agreement with Framework for City Art Plan. Introducing this evening will be our Parks and Recreation Director, Brian Smith.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We have for you tonight a professional service agreement for City Art Plan. Just to give you a little bit of background into why arts matters in Oak Harbor. In Washington State, arts and culture sector was a $72.9 billion industry. In 2021, about almost 11% of the state's GDP. That represents 187,196 jobs, which is about 5.2% of Washington's workforce, at a total compensation of $33.9 billion within the state. In April of 2023, Island County and the town of Coopville, as well as the city of Langley and us, Oak Harbor, voted to cost share the development of a comprehensive economic development strategy, or CEDS, for Island County, and the EDC will oversee that process. The state has brought in $1.6 million in revenue from local and state government grant support. Some of those come from the National Endowment for the Arts, Small Business Administration with their Shuttered Venue Operations Grant, the American Rescue Plan Act, and others. So, at a series of work sessions, the City of Oak Harbor Arts Commission identified priorities that aligned with the powers and duties set during the creation of the Arts Commission, as well as feedback from council in establishing better procedures for the acquisition and placement of public art, and the desire for arts programming. The Arts Commission established the creation of a city arts plan as priority number one. Staff requested proposals for a consulting firm to assist in development of an arts plan that will create a shared vision and process for public art placement, arts programs, art and cultural events, funding, and partnership opportunities for the city. The arts plan focuses on developing creative strategies that will guide the work of the city through 2023. The resulting arts plan will bolster the city's existing work, providing guiding principles and procedures, establish a shared vision, identify and prioritize goals and strategies, and explore new opportunities. It will sync with the overall city mission and give direction on leveraging resources. The goal is to uncover Oak Harbor's creative assets and recommend strategies to build on those assets to strengthen the community. The art plan will be based upon extensive community input, research of arts industry best practices and trends, analysis of the city's creative assets, discovery of new opportunities, and analysis of existing funding sources and research of new funding opportunities. We got proposals from several different organizations. 6 of those were complete. We had a review committee based from staff and the Arts Commission. And we looked at several different factors. We looked at successful plans in other communities. We looked at their ability to innovate, provide innovative engagement, and their outreach with the public. We looked at their ability to create effective and useful and engaging websites for art information. We also looked at their approach to helping us be able to build our own, as well as provide GIS assets, promote local artists, highlight and help with marketing, art within the community, and then looking at leveraging of economic development funding opportunities. Framework was selected based off their experience, local presence, staff credentials, and ability to perform high-quality work within a budget and to meet schedules. They submitted a proposal for professional services in the amount of $75,875 and provided a work plan over a 6-month period that included all of the scope that were asked for in the RFP. The 6 phases would have research set up, outreach with the community, a residency with interviews with stakeholders, the council, the Creative Arts Commission, and the public. They would take that information and draft up a plan, get feedback based off that plan, and then bring that back to council for adoption. The budget for the plan exists in Fund 115 Creative Arts. It has a balance of $248,500, and if approved, staff will include this amount in the mid-year 2024 budget amendment for council approval. The staff is recommending a motion authorizing the mayor to approve the professional services agreement with Framework for $75,875 to develop a city arts plan that will inform council and the Arts Commission in their decision-making around creative arts placement, arts programming, and leveraging economic development opportunity around arts and special events. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Brian. With that, I would like to confirm with our city clerk that we've had no public comment on this issue.
That's correct, Mayor. We've received no comments.
Okay. And at this time, I would like to ask those present here with us this evening if you would like to make a public comment on this issue before we move forward. Hearing none, I would request or call upon council for their questions and comments at this time on this issue. Yes, Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you for the presentation, Brian. I heard you say it initially, but not at your summary there. This will include a procurement process, right? And how we go about procuring art and the bid submittal and all
Right,
that.
correct, yeah.
Okay.
So it provides policy, guidance, and recommendations along with language to be codified in how we would do a call for art. If organizations come forward and say, hey, we'd like to place a piece of art with the city, then there is guidance on how we would go about that process, rather than just a first come, first serve.
Right.
The idea is to have a uniform guidance in how we present the city, right? So it's not just such a patchwork. We understand the character that we want to present to the world, and we build upon that shared vision.
Personally, I think that's great. You know, this is something that's I think been needed for a little while, and I'm happy to see it come forward. And if, unless there's any other questions, I'll make the motion. There you go.
Councilmember Wiesner.
Yeah, I just have to have some comments before you make the motion, Councilmember Marshall. You know, I'm going to apprehensively support this, and it's not because I don't think it needs to be done, right? But when I look at consultants, right, and when I look at consultant groups that have been hired, and I look at their accomplishments and where they've been, and it's great that we have the ability to bring on some consultants that certainly have some, you know, great creds, right? But it's the city of Seattle, it's the city of Olympia. I mean, we will be the smallest cred on this consultant's list, right? And I kind of reached out, you know, to some of the other cities, like Anacortes, who does a great job with their arts, right? And they have a focus, right? And, you know, asked them whether they hired a $75,000 consultant to create that plan. And it was more community driven. It was more, you know, based locally. It was more based upon what the town kind of says the feel is, right? And I realize we've struggled with that. And that's the reason I'm going to support this, right? Because we've struggled. Let's face it, we've struggled with, this has been a topic of discussion, and to make it so it's no longer a topic of discussion, and we can get some direction, and we can start creating some art that has the feel of our community rather than putting art into the community, hoping it ends up coming together, right? And I'm certainly not outside the box. I've said before, art, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Something that I may think is fabulous, somebody else may say is a total piece of junk, and I totally respect that, right? And art is important, and I agree with that. And again, another reason I'm going to support this, because it is something we need in our community. It's what makes a difference. And quite frankly, I'm doing this because the Arts Council here has done a lot of heavy lifting in our community. The murals on Main Street and a lot of that stuff, and I want to support that. But the only reason I'm coming out is I'm expecting to see something happen out of this. And I just want to put everybody on notice, including the consultants, right? Because we have a really good track record of hiring some really good consultants and then putting that book up on the shelf and saying, well, we got a really good plan out of that, but not implementing, right? This is some serious money, and I've said it before. You know, my upbringing. This almost kills me, right? To think that we're going to spend $75,000 on this. But I also know it's been vetted. It's been vetted by staff. It's been vetted by council. Or our arts commission. We have to acknowledge the people that we've asked to volunteer to step up and vet these things for us. We have to acknowledge the work that's gone into this. But I just want to be real clear that I'm not expecting a pretty colored book that goes on a shelf out of this. I'm really, really expecting a direction that we can all look at and say, yeah, that's Oak Harbor. That says Oak Harbor. That is going to make Oak Harbor be a place that when you come here, not only you're going to have art to look at, but it's going to fit, and it's going to feel right, and it's going to enhance our city, right? And that's not to say that what we've been doing isn't, and it hasn't. I'm not saying that at all. I'm speaking to the $75,000 we're about to spend on making that plan to do so, okay? So I'm going to support it, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that I'm apprehensive about it. And again, just to staff, you know, when you bring us a list of consultants with these big list of accomplishments, and they're all Seattle and Olympia and Tacoma, and that's not us. I mean, these are cities that are dealing with, you know, a $20 million arts budget. I wouldn't be surprised, right? And need consultants to figure out how to spend that sizable amount of money and make it all work. I'm expecting these folks to do a lot of public engagement here. I'm expecting a lot of input from the citizens, and I'm hoping the citizens will provide it. I'm hoping they will show out in numbers. I'm hoping the meetings they will have will be multiple, and they will make themselves available to as many people in the community as possible. I hope we don't have a Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock meeting as the only public input time. So I'm going to have some expectations out of this, and you know, at the end I realize once we sign off on it, we get what we get, but I'm certainly going to be relying upon our staff and our Arts Commission, who puts forth all the effort to relay my concerns, keep these folks on task, and come forward with a plan that we can all look at and we can say, yeah, the people have spoken, and we've created something that we can all be proud of and move forward with and actually implement.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. When I look back at the city's previous efforts and expenditures around public art, I see a lot of directionless decisions that probably have cost the city more money than it should have spent. And so I hope that exactly this will be an implementation document that guides and directs decision-making to make sure we're all on the same page and not special interest decisions being made, right?
Thank you, Councilmember Wiesner. Councilmember Stuckey.
You're on fire. Good on ya. Just to drive the point home, because whenever we talk about spending money on consultants, there's always, you know, how can you spend that money? How much money approximately is in the artist budget?
250.
Yeah, I think it was on there, 250. Okay.
Yeah, $248,500.
Just to reiterate, I know we said it, but just to reiterate, this is coming out of the arts budget.
Yep.
That can only be used for arts, because there's always the, well, that should have been spent on the roads. This isn't coming from the funds that are spent on the roads. I just want to hammer that point home, Whitby News Times, that it's being spent out of the arts budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stuckey. Councilmember,
Marshall.
no, it's not. Hoffmeyer, thank you.
I think the horse is barely breathing, so I'll tread lightly. You know, I hate spending this amount of money, right? You know, when we can't properly maintain our parks, when we can barely properly staff our PD, I hate spending this amount of money. However, it is in the arts fund, and it can only be used on arts-related items. That is correct. I 100% support the goal. And, you know, that is the community feeling more engaged and more vested. When the city on our own without a consultant, I say we, I wasn't here yet, I don't know that many of us up here were, but a few years ago when the city went out for public comment on a single piece of art, you know, there were, I think, 700 comments, for instance. So I'm hoping that paying a consultant this amount of money gets us in the thousands of numbers in public comment, not hundreds. And I hope that that is valuable and local information. And I would hope that the consultant, you know, tracks location and values, you know, puts added value on the residents that live on North Whidbey as opposed to off island, for instance. And but yes, I very reluctantly will support this, and I think it's part of a necessary step forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoffmeyer. Anyone else? All right. With that, I will turn it up. Oh, sorry, Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the reasons why I support this idea is that it is an actionable plan with opportunities for funding sources, and so it's not, you know, and I don't get the sense in reading through this is it's just going to be one of those that, you know, it's a nice, pretty document that we can put on the shelf. It has got quite a bit of public engagement scheduled in there. It's got actionable plans, and it's got funding, and so it potentially could be paying for itself in the long run. And when we have to, as so eloquently put, we have to spend it on arts-related stuff. And I think it's best used if we have a plan on how we're going to use that money, how we're going to spend that money, where we're going to put it, and then how we're going to procure art. And so I think it's always in the city's best interest to have a plan. So that's why I support this.
Thank you, Councilmember Marshall. Anyone else for the good of the order? Hearing no additional comments, I would entertain a motion. Yes, Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to authorize the mayor to approve the professional services agreement with Framework for $75,875 to develop a city arts plan.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion at this time? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, council.
Moving on to the next contract, professional services agreement with Award-Vending for pickleball courts. And with that will be our Parks and Rec Director, Mr. Brian Smith.
All right, next item. At the April 26th workshop last year, staff provided City Council with an update on the Memorandum of Understanding with the Oak Harbor Public School District to improve the district's pickleball courts. Cost estimates for the project came in well above the $50,000 of RE2 funding that had been allocated by the city for the project that was redirected to that renovation project. Council indicated that they would prefer the funding be used for design and planning of new pickleball courts on city property as recommended by the Parks and Recreation Advisory Commission. Staff worked with the commission in developing a scope for professional services and solicited proposals in November of 2023. Staff received 6 inquiries from contractors and 2 completed proposals for professional services for location and planning and design. Staff reviewed the proposals. One of the vendors was dropped due to exceptions with insurance requirements, and RWD was selected. We looked at 4 possible locations: Sumner Park, Fort Nugent Park, Windjammer Park, and Holland Gardens and Neal Park. The Sumner Park site and the Fort Nugent site were the 2 leading sites. Staff and RWD researched both those locations with regards to requirements the project will need to meet to conform with our municipal code. Based on those requirements we reviewed, Sumner Park would require at least some, if not extensive, right-of-way, parking, and buffering improvements. The playground would need to be removed. Ultimately, we did not recommend eliminating that playground for that neighborhood park, although there are playgrounds within a half-mile radius of the park that are located on school district property. Although this site appeared to be a perfect match and fit with, especially with the grading of the site, we did consider the threat of additional costs resulting from compliance with code requirements and removed it from consideration as the first location for court complex, but a possible secondary location for a smaller configuration in the future as we add additional pickleball courts. We are looking into the Fort Nugent site for a possible location. We're currently conducting geotechnical testing with plans that include 2 test pits to inspect the soils. RWD did agree with that location and provided a proposal based off that scope to prepare and construction-ready documents for up to 8 pickleball courts with ADA access, protective fencing, amenities such as benches and picnic tables, as the budget allows. Scope of services is broken into 3 progressive designs of 30, 95, and 100. We'll have engineering estimates for the total cost of construction at 30% design. Total for all phases for the planning and design is $78,100 was a proposal from RWD. We're not waiting for those construction estimates. We have $50,000 for the funding that has already been approved for design and planning of the project. We're also already going after funding for construction of the courts. So we have applied for the Youth Athletic Facilities grant, as well as the Community Outdoor Athletic Facilities grant, both for $800,000. Those numbers there are the max you can ask for with those grants. The Community Outdoor Athletics Facilities has no match, and the Youth Athletic Facilities has a 40% match. Both those grants have up to 20% of the revenue that can be spent on planning and design. We also have our state representatives that are very interested in supporting construction of the facilities, and we'll probably connect with them during the regular legislative session for additional match if needed, depending on what comes out of the RCO grants. So the staff's recommendation is a motion authorizing the mayor to approve the professional services agreement with RWD for $78,100 to develop construction plans for pickleball court facility. The additional $28,100 on top of the already approved $50,000 would come from the same REIT 2 funding that the original $50,000 is from. And we would just include that in the mid-year appropriations. Any questions?
Thank you, Ryan. So with that, I would like to confirm with our city clerk that we received no public comment on this issue.
Mayor, we received no comments in advance, but we do have 3 people who have signed up to speak to this issue this evening.
Okay, great.
The first is Mark DeJong.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council members. My name is Mark DeYoung. I was at your last meeting earlier this month, and you may remember that a lot of pickleball players filled most of these seats to show support for Brian's plan. I think it's a great plan. Right now, actually, we started in late fall. Somebody sent out a message in social media saying they'd like to get together and play some pickleball. 4 people responded. Today, we're a group, informal, but a group of 22 people that play pickleball Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, a couple of hours each day. And in fair weather, we play outside at Rotary Park at the school pickleball courts. We usually fill from 2 to 4 of those courts. And on foul weather days, we're fortunate enough to play at the roller barn, those Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I think Brian's plan is great. We're looking forward to that. But right now, there's a concern about where we play on the, I guess those courts are owned by the school board. And you know, it's right near the Chamber of Commerce. Chamber of Commerce is where visitors come to see Oak Harbor and what Oak Harbor represents. The Chamber of Commerce is a great building, very representative of Oak Harbor. But the pickleball courts right next to it, where visitors might want to come and play, are really in disrepair. And I understand that your funding can't do anything about it, but it doesn't those courts are in a park that visitors don't even know whether it's the school or the council that is responsible for that. So those courts are not a great representation. They're in very poor condition. They're in some places a tripping hazard, and they're barely playable as decent pickleball courts. I'm wondering whether there's some way, as it is a representation for Oak Harbor. You know, pickleball is a very easy sport where people bring their equipment with them when they come to visit Oak Harbor, whether they're camping in the area and they come and they want to go to restaurants, they want to go to a movie theater, they want to spend their money in Oak Harbor, and they might want to play pickleball, and it just doesn't represent Oak Harbor very well. So I'm wondering if there's a way that the council can look into working with the school board about getting those courts resurfaced or repaired into a better playable condition, because I know Brian's plan is great. And by the way, Brian has my contact information, and I'll be glad to offer any information or advice about pickleball if he needs any for the future project. But that's a future project, and there are people, we're 22 people. I know there are more than that in Oak Harbor that are pickleball players, and if something could be done more immediately to help out, that would be great.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, next is Pat Lamont.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for listening to us tonight. My name is Pat Lamont. I've lived in Oak Harbor for about 50 years now. I wanted to give you a little bit of a history about pickleball on Whidbey Island. Two gentlemen named Claire Cruz and Ken Fry started pickleball on Whidbey Island in 2016. They approached the Oak Harbor Senior Center about supporting a group of seniors who wanted to play pickleball. The Senior Center helped out with initial equipment and advertising. It didn't take long to get a small group together to play regularly on the outside courts behind the Chamber of Commerce. Initially, it was a group for seniors over 50. In 2020, this informal group became a formal club called North Whidbey Picklers, with officers, a board of directors, and a checking account. I'm the treasurer of that group. Our first task was to find an indoor place to play in the winter when rain, wind, cold, etc. made outdoor play difficult. And after extensive looking for suitable venues, a contract was signed with Oak Harbor Christian School in 2021. Currently, the North Whidbey Picklers is a group of 30 members of various ages, but mostly over 50, with another 15 on the waiting list, who collectively pay over $900 a month to rent space and pay for equipment and insurance to play pickleball 9 hours per week year-round. We would really love it if we had a better place to play that didn't cost us so much money, that these people could play on a regular basis, and we'd really advocate for that. And we're here to support the council and the mayor in anything that we can do to make that happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, next to speak regarding pickleball is Connie Punch.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. I am Connie Punch. I am the Vice President of North Whidbey Picklers. And as Pat said, we have 30 members with a 15-member wait list. We have active walk-ins that come regularly in the summertime. When people come back to spend their summers at Whidbey, it becomes even more difficult to get play in. So one of the things is that pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the nation. It's for the 5th consecutive year. And many people say, why is it so popular? It's a sport for all ages. It doesn't require a lot of additional, you have a ball and a paddle and people, and that's what we do. It gives seniors an opportunity, or anybody, some more social interaction. And then young people have become very inundated with the sport. They play it in their schools, and they're looking forward to doing many activities with both generations. So, why do we need more pickleball courts in Oak Harbor? We talked about the existing outdoor courts. It is difficult to play. Not a lot of wind protection in many areas on the island. Not a lot of facilities for bathrooms, parking, all of those things. So, and the demand doesn't satisfy the amount of courts that we could use. I'm sure the 8 will be great, and you'll see that even more will be needed within a short time. So, we are excited about the prospects. We thank you for taking the time to listen to us and to see how viable it is for us to have something in our town. Otherwise, we have to go off island or somewhere else to play. So we would appreciate and love to extend the offer for you to come see what it's all about. So come play with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, that concludes those that had signed up to speak on this issue.
Great. So with that, I will open it up to anyone else that's here this evening that didn't sign up that would like to speak on this topic. Yes, go ahead. Please come forward, state your name.
Hi, I'm Sharon Jensen. It's a pleasure to be here with you all tonight. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I think I have more of a question just as a community member of Oak Harbor. Our 4 girls spent most of their youth here. Now I'm back as a what do we call us? Empty nester. And I like to maintain an active lifestyle, so that's all very important to me. Community is as well, and also always good stewardship of public funds. So I think that's very, very important. And I just wanted, it's more of a question related to hopefully the grants that we would be getting. So what happens if we spend the $78,000 consultant money and we don't get the grants?
We can address that question during council discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's that consideration, and I think my other questions, and as I become more aware of what's going on and hearing from Nolan, as I also heard from you at the school board meeting, nice to see you again. You know, it is really all about being a united community and what's in the best interest of all while we maintain, you know, good stewardship of public funds. So, you know, I think about a potential community center. I think about downtown redevelopment efforts, money towards the arts, just that we would have traction going forward in the same direction. I go into downtown and I think, are we missing something that could welcome us a little bit more brightly, if you will, to the downtown corridor, which I consider like Old Pioneer, if you will? If I wasn't living here, I might go, what am I being drawn to? So I think that might be a wonderful place for some of this art consideration. So as a community member, yeah, I'm all about pickleball, and I love the idea of using resources we already have. So if we could do some resurfacing to make the existing courts playable, circle back with the school district if we need to. I'm not sure how current that conversation is, but I'm all about community and hopefully working together wisely. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments from the audience that's here this evening that didn't sign up? Yes, sir. Step forward and state your name, please.
Yeah, my name is Tom Jones. I play with the North Whidbey Picklers. When they talk about the membership, it's very different than what they talk about memberships in other areas. For example, in Squim, somebody said I should go over and look at that. They have 8 courts. I think they're about 4 or 5 years old. They're in great shape. And I talked to the people over there. They have a membership of over 400. The membership for the Skagit Valley College over in Mount Vernon, they have a membership of over 900. So, what we define as membership in North Whidbey Picklers is people that are willing to pay $30 and we can play indoors. And we have to put a cap on that because we don't have the space. So I have no doubt at all that the sport will go through the roof here. If we put in eight pickleball courts in a good location, people know where they are, they have restrooms, they have parking, they're safe. Right now, where the courts are at Rotary Park, you wouldn't even know they're there. They're way in the background. You'd have to go searching. And I tried searching, I had a hard time finding online. So my message is, we're not even scratching the surface of what we can have. Once we get new courts, I'm certain that the city will provide clinics, lessons, tournaments, things that'll draw in more people, and of all ages. And anyway, I just wanted to say that when you don't get hung up on a low membership number, because that is not representative of what we're going to see when we get new courts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments from the audience that's here this evening on this topic? All right, hearing none, I will close the public comment period and turn it over to council for their questions and comments. And with that, Councilmember Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. I think there's no doubt that, pickleball is replacing tennis and some other sports, right? I can remember when tetherball was in, every park, right? And we need to update our facilities as times change, right? But for a little history, just so we can talk about Rotary Park a little bit and a little history there. We originally looked at redoing Rotary Park, and that's where the $50,000 budget initially came from. We thought $50,000 has got to be enough money to go, knock some roots out, fix some fences, restripe and put up some nets, right? Well, unfortunately, that's not the world of Jarvis Bacon and government funding and et cetera. That estimate came up to about $190,000. And we as a council, had a really tough time of spending $190,000 on property we don't own. Right? And hopefully everybody can appreciate that. So that's when the idea came up of, hey, let's look at building new pickleball courts. And of course, we've tasked our fantastic Park and Recreation Director with this task, along with creating a new recreation program, along with getting all caught up on all of the neglected maintenance in all of our parks. And at one time we were looking at building a new park, and we have a windjammer plan that we need to implement, and we're working on trying to get the splash park up and running, and trying to get our grass to grow in our park, and trying to fix our softball fields. And so, lots coming at him, and I'm concerned, right? I'm concerned, I guess my question is the same. What happens if we don't get the $1.5 or $1.2 million grant? We create a $78,000 plan, and we don't have the money to implement it. What's plan B, Brian? Can you help me out?
Sure. Yeah. So my approach to funding projects is kind of three-tiered, I guess you say. First and foremost, we usually go to operational funding and general fund for, first of all, safety critical items. So, for instance, we brought, playground chips to last council meeting. So items like that where we know that it's either out of code compliance or there's a safety issue, then we try to get those addressed first. If after that, it's things that we know are coming to the end of their life where they'll start to become a safety issue, or we know that it's going to be more expensive down the road, and we don't really have time to wait a year cycle through the application and the agreements and everything to put in place for grant funding or other alternative revenue sources. We know that we need to have a stable and secure funding source, first and foremost, to make sure we address those so we save ourselves money down the road. New facilities, like the pickleball courts or some other new amenity, almost always go after alternative funding. And there is a lot of alternative funding out there. Now, we've brought in $3 million in the last year for different parks and recreation endeavors, and huge thanks to Wendy Horn and all of her work in doing that. Funding's available there. We'll have the planning done within 6 months. We've gone after 2 very competitive grants, and we've doubled up on them. So even if we get just one of them, we'll be able to do the project. If we don't, then we have state representatives that are interested in the project, and they were good enough to award us $200,000 for the feasibility study for the recreation center. So I feel pretty confident in their awareness and support of the community here. We'll go down that avenue, and we'll just keep applying for grants. We'll get it. Trust the process. It'll happen. I have no doubt we'll have pickleball courts, and I'll need a little help on my backhand and how to keep people out of my kitchen. But yeah, so it's just a matter of timing.
I think our parks director's a pickler. Yeah, I appreciate that. And, because you get the fear, right? The fear we go spend $78,000 on that, $78,000 that could have gone to fixing the courts over at Rotary Park, right? And would have gotten us halfway there, right? And I do want, again, with history, remind everybody that at one time, pickleball courts were on the Windjammer plan. And, of course, I came along after the plan was in implementation. I, quite frankly, thought pickleball courts were going in Windjammer Park for the longest time because it was discussed. It was part of the plan, and I don't, quite frankly, know where that came off rails. And Brett Arvidsson's here. Brett, step up to the mic, please, Brett.
Actually, the basketball courts were designed to be multi-task courts, so we can actually play pickleball on them too. But you just have to put some nets up. So they were actually sized for pickleball, and so but we couldn't afford to put in just a dedicated one. So we put in one that is useful for multiple purposes.
And thank you for that history. You see where history is important, right? And this is why we talk about this stuff, because, yeah, that was kind of a surprise to me. And you know, here's the deal. I guess I'm concerned $78,000 to develop construction plans. Of that, about half of that, right, is storm drain calculations, holes, permitting. The cost is the same for a big project as it does for a small project. That's the problem with these small projects, because this seems like a simple thing, right? I mean, back in the day, I can remember, I think, when we did the asphalt at Rotary Park, I think it was, Craig's Construction showed up with an asphalt truck, and a few city workers went out there and kind of raked it out, and lo and behold, they created some tennis courts, right? There wasn't storm drain and design and, engineers' estimates and all the things that have to be created these days. So it is what it is. I get that, but I guess, again, my concern is $78,100. Man, that'd go a long way to fixing our softball field, and that would go a long ways to deferred maintenance for you. Now, with that said, obviously if we get the grant, and 20% of the grant is allowed for this design, the money comes back into the general fund, because we use the grant money to come back into the Parks Fund, and this becomes a no cost to the city. This becomes a grant-funded opportunity. So I have to ask the question, is there a reason we need to do the design before the grant?
We are a lot more competitive with our grants when we're able to say we have brought on a designer and they're working on construction plans, and we have a date that we know that those will be shovel-ready plans. So yeah, typically we want to already be in the process while we apply for grants. The timing didn't quite work out. Would have loved to have gone RWD on about 3 months ago. But yeah, typically we want to jump in and have plans in hand before we go out for grants.
So it makes it more competitive. So, and again, that's why we ask the questions, right? And we appreciate the answers. And Brian, like I say, I can't emphasize enough, how much we've put on you and how much you've accomplished in the short time you've been here. For the people in the audience, we're getting ready to launch, youth and adult recreation programs throughout this city, right? Which is a big thing, and it's been a dream of many of us on council for a long time, and we're finally doing that, and we're doing that with no more money, right? I mean, we didn't dump a lot of money into your budget. We gave you some help and some personnel to get some of it done, but we didn't give you a ton of money to do it with. So I appreciate all you're doing with what you have to work with, and I'll yield to the rest of the council. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Wiesner. Just to add a little bit to what Brian said too, most of the grant programs require us to be dirt turn ready in 12 months. So that's why we're moving forward with the process the way we are. So yes, Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Yeah, I think, given tonight's public comment and this agenda item, it was incredibly convenient and intuitive that we did have a school board member here. Thank you. In your capacity as a citizen, I understand that, but thank you. I think partnerships in government, whether it be private-public partnership or whether it be government to government, they're so valuable, and that's where the taxpayer gets their bang for the buck. South Whidbey has Pickles Deli, love it. We have the North Whidbey Picklers. So I do, after this, I hope somebody's around. I would love to know where to get one of those pink shirts. Sometimes there's so few people in the audience, and it's nice to see a full room tonight. I did real quick want to see if our Deputy City Administrator would be willing to briefly describe REIT 2 funds.
Yeah, REIT 1 and REIT 2. So there's two different types of, well, they're practically the same. There's some minor differences between the two. Those are collected from real estate sales. So it's a real estate excise tax on the sale of real estate. We collect about $450,000 a year in REIT 1 and REIT 2. It's about 0.25%. Each REIT is 0.25% of the sales price of the home. The usage of those funds can be for new capital projects, and the capital projects are outlined in the state law. But parks facilities definitely is permitted in both REIT 1 and REIT 2, and it could also be used for maintenance of parks projects as well on a more limited basis. Well, maintenance on projects, including parks projects on a more limited basis.
You're awesome, thank you. And with that, I do share similar concerns with, ultimately funding the project in whole. I realize we're in quite a pickle with funding some of these projects. Stole that from him.
I was just going to say.
Stole that from him. But, I too believe that if we play the game, we're going to make this happen. And if the North Whidbey pickleballers are as diligent with reaching out to our state representatives as they have been us, it certainly will happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoffmeyer. Anyone else for the good of the order? Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. There's obviously a lot to unpack here. I appreciate all the public comment and the people coming to speak to this. I think, Ms. Jensen, the comment that you made is being a good steward of public funds, and that, it resonates with me. That's huge, right? And I know it's not going to be popular, but that's one of the reasons why I voted no on the $50,000 to renovate Rotary Park, is because it's not ours. It's not our facility. It's the school district's. We were third in line to use it behind the school district, behind North Whidbey Pool Parks and Rec. That agreement could have been canceled at any time, and so we would have invested this money and then not have the rights to it. And so that's why we kind of diverted into creating our own. And in my mind, this is just a stopgap. This is a small project as we're working towards a larger project. I mean, you've heard us talk about a rec center. The rec center is going to give us that opportunity to play indoors all year round. On council, we've talked numerous times, and Brian knows my passion for this, is creating a regional sports complex. I mean, one where we can have additional fields, we can have softball fields, we can have baseball fields, we can have the pickleball courts. That's part of a larger plan, and one that I hope that someday that we can work towards. But until then, we have to address what our needs are, and I believe this is a need that's been well communicated in our community. And without the plan, we can't go forward on the funding. And I have absolute faith in Brian, and I have faith in Wendy that with this plan, we will get the funding. We will be able to get that. And I think that this is a great addition, will be a great addition to our community, but just a stopgap. It's just one small project towards a larger project that I would like to see eventually get done. My question for you, Brian, is, you mentioned the challenges with Sumner Park, and I know we discussed this a little bit last time at workshop. Some of the same issues are going to be faced, particularly with parking when it comes to Fort Nugent Park. I'm curious, and you already answered that, so I'm not going to ask that again. I am curious, though, as to why Neal Park or Holland Gardens was eliminated from the list, because it does seem like it would meet some of those sloping issues that you talked about with Sumner, that it's a relatively flat piece, it's in the middle of town. It's got quite a bit of open space, and so why was that one eliminated?
Very similar reasons, just for the additional costs with supporting infrastructure around storm drain, electrical access, and parking improvements. We know that we're going to have to reconfigure the entryway into Fort Nugent Park if and when the school district moves forward with developing the new school at that location. So that, it already gives us some opportunity to look at how we reconfigure that. We've also had discussion about expanding that park, and that gives us a lot of possible opportunity in the future to add more parking, add an additional entrance, expand both the fields and relieve some of the pressure on all the use that we have there. Lastly, just the configuration of it for putting in other supporting amenities like a restroom facility nearer to the courts is most ideal at that location of the four that we looked at. Yes, thank you. A very big consideration was proximity to residential and the threat of noise pollution.
Right.
We watch very closely around the country of litigation that has come against cities with the creation of courts. So placement and that proximity is also a big consideration.
So my my closing thoughts would be encouraging the public that is here to reach out to your legislators that we can support this, comment and take part in the feasibility study when we do look at doing a rec center. And I really would like to see collaboration between the school district and the Parks Department on how we can fix all our amenities. You know, softball, looking at the softball fields, looking at perhaps Rotary Park. How can we make this work for our community? Because ultimately that's what we're here for, right? Is to help everybody and to serve the public. And so as soon as we can have some of those conversations, I think we're going to be better off as a community. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Marshall. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Brent. You may or may not even know the answer to this, but regarding the basketball courts at Windjammer that are intended to be multi-use, do we have pickleball nets that players
No,
can
we'd
rent, or do they have to bring their
We'd
own?
have to put some nets in, and I think there's some striping involved with it, and there are temporary facilities that you can buy for that. So we discussed it at the time, you know, we put the basketball courts into service in 2019, then COVID hit shortly afterwards, and it kind of fell off the end of the world, but that was the intention. But also, we only could fit 2 courts in there, you know, and we're talking 8 here, so.
Right, yeah, better than none.
But we do have the capacity to do that on the short term.
Okay, so that was the intention. They're not necessarily ready to be multi-sport courts at the moment, but if we
It wouldn't be a big investment.
got some okay, well, thank you. We'll get on that.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any other questions or comments? Before I call on you again, Councilmember Wiesner, I just had a quick question for Brian. Looking logistically at those diagrams that you put up, those courts were all in close proximity to trees. Are we going to have root issues and issues with the courts themselves, the surfacing?
It's anticipated we will have to move some of those trees back just to make sure that we have a.
So that is
exactly
being
that we
addressed, is
don't
what you're
have-
saying,
yes,
in the
yeah.
plan? Okay, perfect. That's all it was just something I observed, so. Yes, Councilmember Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to follow up on Councilmember Heisen's comment. You know, I'd sure like to take a look at, you know, the use of the basketball courts now. I certainly don't want to make those unusable. I do see those used, especially on weekends down there. But maybe we can come up with a, you know, rotation plan or something that makes sense, right, where those courts become available for pickleball. You know, and of course, after I said all those great things about all these things you're doing with no money, and we've got all these things stacked on you, we're stacking one more thing on you, right? But, you know, I do look at that as maybe a short-term solution, you know, if those basketball courts are not being utilized as much as
That's
we
an
think.
interesting idea. We'll have to look at installation of the sleeves for the posts and just making sure that's not going to be a safety issue for the basketball court people. But yeah, we'll look at it. I wasn't aware that was intended to be a multi-use court. So we'll take a look.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilmember Wiesner. Anyone else for the good of the order on this issue? Yes, Councilmember Wittgenstein.
Let me get to it. I can make a motion if that's where we're at. Okay, good. I motion to authorize the mayor to approve the professional service agreement with RWD for $78,100 to develop construction plans for a pickleball court facility.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Do I hear any other further discussion on this issue before we take a vote? Hearing none, all in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to the next item on the agenda, professional services agreement with Moffett and Nickel.
All right. Last episode of the Parks and Recreation show.
It's okay.
After a couple of $70,000 appetizers, we now present the main course. Oh, there we go. Okay. The City of Oak Harbor Marina, as you know, is in need of dredging of sediment approximately every 10 years. The marina was partially dredged in 2010, 2011, and has experienced significant sedimentation to the point that the marina water depth has become a concern. Dredging the marina will require an extensive engineering and permitting process, estimated to take several years to complete. The city retained Moffett and Nickel to prepare a feasibility study to evaluate the dredging needs and establish a path forward through the permitting, design, and construction stages of this project. That was phase one. We did an amendment with them for an additional $188,000 to include the redevelopment feasibility study portion of that as well. Now that phase 1 is completed, we're ready to move on to phase 2. On February 20th of this year, City Council adopted the dredging feasibility plan from phase 1 with alternative 1, dredging to the maximum extent possible as the preferred option. Alternative 1 provides several different benefits, including allowing the city to dredge areas neglected during the 2010 dredging. It reduces costs of the dredging in the 10-year cycle and allow for only minor dredging needed at the end of the permit period, which we'll be able to make use and leverage that existing permit and dredge again at a fraction of the cost that it's going to require us now. Also includes the compensatory mitigation required by regulatory agencies, such as the removal of the covered moorage roofs, removing the sunken barges on the south border of the marina, removing the boat hoist, and removal of miscellaneous creosote piles. So this project will require several years to complete. Like I mentioned, we have 4 phases of it. Phase 1 is the feasibility plan, which was just completed. Phase 2 is the preliminary engineering and permitting. Then after this phase, we'll go into final engineering before construction period services. With the adoption of the dredging feasibility plan, the work now enters phase 2 of the project. It's targeted. The project is targeting the 2026-2027 dredging in-water window to perform the dredging once that's all completed. Contract amendment number 2 with Moffitt and Nichols includes beginning phase 2, which is preliminary engineering and permitting activities. It contains the preliminary design and preparation with local, state, and federal regulatory permits that are necessary for the dredging activities. The process requires a significant amount of sampling and analysis of the sediments. Those will determine the disposal method of the dredged sediments. We're particularly concerned for and want to look for any toxic components that are eligible for open water disposal, which will be a significant construction cost savings. The contract contains several contingencies tasks as well that may not be necessary depending on the regulatory review process. The project involves performing the preliminary design. That'll give us some cost estimates for the construction, or narrow those down so we have a better understanding of that as we go after the funding for this. The contingencies for this will only be initiated in the event that that the permitting regulatory agencies require that work. We've been very happy with Moffitt and Nichols. So far, we've been under budget. We have additional things that we'll put some of that budget towards, but they've been very responsive. They've worked very quickly within the schedule, and they're creative in their cost-saving solutions. This contract amendment will be funded using marina funds. That comes from marina user rates. The funding sources will include the Marina Capital Reserves. We'll also go after grants, debt financing, and marina rates when we do the actual dredging construction project. The eventual costs and funding sources for the next phase of the dredging work will be identified as the project progresses through this phase 2, which will give us a lot of that information and allow council to be able to make some informed decisions on how we want to do the completed financing for it. So the budget for this phase, the amount for this phase 2 project is $361,837. Like I mentioned, it'll be covered by marina rates. We're targeting about 20 weeks for completion of phase 2. And then looking, as I mentioned, at the 2026-2027 in-water window for completing the dredging portion of the project. Staff is recommending that City Council authorize the mayor to sign amendment number 2 to the professional services agreement with Moffitt and Nichols in the amount of $361,837. for the Oak Harbor dredging project. We are targeting June, a meeting in June to come back to council during that phase to update you and give you more information and receive guidance from council on how we keep moving forward on this project. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Brian. So with that, I will turn it over to Julie to see if we have received any public comment on this issue.
No, Mayor, we received no comments on this item.
Great, thank you. And I will now ask those who are here with us this evening and present, if you wish to speak on this matter, this is the time. Do we have anyone? Hearing none, I will call upon council for their questions and comments. Councilmember Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Brian, just to make clear so that I'm clear and everybody else is clear, these permits that we're pulling are actually 10-year permits, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
Gives us a 10-year window in which to do all the things we need down under our marina to move forward. Because obviously we have a lot of conversation going on about the marina and what the future of that is. So we're not looking at a one-of here. We're actually looking at a 10-year permit.
It's a maintenance permit, so what we are applying for is the dredging and the mitigation associated with that. If we wanted to come back and say, build a new dock or a breakwater or something, this permit would not count towards that.
Okay, but all future maintenance, any additional dredging we need, or if we end up doing the dredging in phases, which is something we've talked about, depending upon funding, we can do
That's why
it.
we want to use that overall footprint, because, say we can do part one and come back later and do another phase, which is not really cost effective, but it's possible. So we can keep dredging in that 10-year period. So the idea is have a good dredging now and do a small maintenance dredging at the end of our permit period. Now to carry us quite a bit. That's why we can save a lot more money in the second dredging.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Wiesner. Anyone else for the good of the order on this issue? Mayor Pro Tem.
I move to authorize the mayor to sign amendment number 2 to the professional service agreement with Moffett and Nickel, Inc. for the City of Oak Harbor dredging project in the amount of $361,837, increasing the total contract amount to $739,338.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second. Okay, we have a question from Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. The sediment sampling and analysis, how long is that good for? The sediment sampling and analysis, how long is that good for? And the reason why I asked this, Brett, is when we were in Washington, D.C., we did have conversation with the Army Corps engineer, and we know that dredging our marina is just a stopgap, right? It's just, It is one of many projects that we need to do. If we don't eventually look at our channel, we could have the deepest marina we want, but we're not going to be able to get there.
Right.
And so one of the recommendations was that we kind of look at this as a whole project that we do in phases. And so if we're already going to be doing the sediment sampling and analysis, could we and would it make sense to then do that in the channel as well? And could that information then be, because already they're doing it, right? Could that information then be used when we're ready to start taking a look at the channel?
It would add a significant amount of cost because, we're actually only doing about a 20-acre site. So we'd probably almost triple the area that we'd have to do sampling. The sampling is done on a per area basis. So to me, that would, the sampling we'd have would certainly apply as we start talking about those permits. But to me, I would probably hold off on we're still going to have to do a permit environmental process for that, for that Corps of Engineers permit outside there. So I'm not sure it'd save us anything, and we're better off doing it closer to when we actually dredge it. Hopefully, we've been clean in previous dredgings, and that's why we had some contingency in there. But I would suggest that we hold off on any analysis until we get closer to what we actually have to do and have a better feel for where we want to dredge.
I would also add, the channel's outside the city limits. We don't have authority to do that project. That's going to have to either be done by the state or the Fed. which is why we're pushing so hard for the Army Corps to, which is why we're pushing for the Army Corps to try and help us with that.
Right.
But if we do end up in some way having to contribute to that, one, it's outside of the current project area. I don't know if we would use marina or even be able to use marina fees for that, if we would even have the capacity within that funding. But also, ideally, we would like another agency to take on that project, including all the soil testing and geotech and hydrological and all that.
That would be ideal, but it didn't sound like that was going to be a possibility, unfortunately. Yeah.
Right, which is the same, and that's the same pushback we got when we did the DC trip last year
Yeah.
as well. When we met with the state office for the Army Corps of Engineers, they went through what the economic equation for that is. They are doing a site visit write-up, and they will provide some recommendations.
Okay.
That'll be in another month or two. We'll come back to council and share those findings and talk about some ideas that they have here at that state office.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Marshall. Anything else for the good of the order? All right. So we have a motion. We have a second. No other comments or questions. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you, council.
All right. So before we move on to the next issue, we're going to take a quick 5-minute recess. We'll be right back at 8:04. Welcome back. Thank you for indulging the recess. Other items for consideration, we have request for support of a resolution forming a Metropolitan Park District by North Whidbey Pool Park and Recreation District. Speaking on behalf of this item will be James Morrow, Board Chair, and Jay Cochran, Executive Director of the North Whidbey Pool Park and Recreation District.
Just clarification is James P. Morrow. So you may say Morrow, but I understand it was printed a certain way in the newspaper. Good evening, Mayor Wright, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members. For the record, I am James P. Morrow, the current chair and a commissioner with 4 other equal elected commissioners of the North Whidbey Pool Park and Recreation District. It's an honor to be able to bring this request for resolution to the council. And because as a retired chief warrant officer with a quarter century, I'm all about getting stuff done. And this is a much more efficient way of doing it than going door to door petition-wise. Our essential request is for your approval of a resolution to allow the voters of Oak Harbor and rural North Whidbey Island to decide by a ballot measure to replace our current Park and Recreation District with a Metropolitan Park District using the current existing boundaries. So why is this request so important? Under the current district structure, we are required to pass a property tax levy every 6 years with a supermajority of 60% or more, citizens voting yes. This legal requirement led to 2 levy failures in the past 6 years ago, causing the John Van Der Zijt Memorial Pool to close until the levy finally passed on the 3rd round. This service disruption and the substantial associated extra costs due to the shutdown led to the district's Board of Commissioners to find an alternative form of district structure that would ensure steady funding for the next 40 years and beyond. The pool's been here for generations already. In contrast with the current district's 60% supermajority levy vote requirement, the proposed Metropolitan Park District, or MPD, would require only a simple majority approval of 50% or more favorable votes. Formation of an MPD would provide steady baseline funding with an ongoing levy. Like many local districts, there's an allowance to raise the levy by 1% annually without a vote of the people, but it's not necessarily required at all. Anything beyond that would have to have a vote of the people. Remember, the 1% annual allowance, not required, but it doesn't even come close to matching inflation. A newly formed MPD would have 2 possible allowed levy rates, and this is just the legal structure of it. Our request is for the lowest allowed rate of 0.25 per $1,000 assessed property valuation. And by some figuring, you could go to 0.5 or 0.75, but the baseline is we're aiming for the 0.25. The current district levy rate we operate under now, and which we've operated for 6 years, not corrected for inflation, has been 20.20 per $1,000 assessed value. The 0.2 fixed rate has not come close to matching the Puget Sound's regional inflation rate. Instead, the levy funds have lost purchasing power, as we all understand about inflation. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics has recently estimated our regional Puget Sound inflation rate to be 5.9% over the last 3 years and 4.6% during the most recent 5 years. So as an example, take a $500,000 property at the 0.20 rate per $1,000 assessed value. It costs an enormous $100. I'm being facetious, okay? That's the lowest allowed rate, at the lowest allowed rate for a metropolitan district would be 0.25. And for the same property, it would cost $125. So that would be an increase of $25 for a $500,000 piece of property. So a very minor increase to ensure that the pool remains open. This is our levy year, being mindful of that, and that's another reason we're pressing this with all due diligence. So during the most recent years following the impact of the failed levies and the COVID pandemic up to the present, our district's worthy Executive Director, Jay Cochran, and her team have continually developed, implemented, and executed successful new programs and expanded existing programs using the district's pool and park and other rec facilities. She's here today to present valuable insights in more detail than I'm able to offer at this point, and I'm going to turn that over to you. Thank you for hearing our request with regard to bringing this proposal before the people for the people's vote.
Hello. I'm excited because it's like Park and Rec Day at the city. Good evening, Mayor, Pro Tem Mayor, and City Council. I'm a little nervous, so if I shake and drop things, I apologize. So I wanted to kind of talk about and compare and contrast what a metropolitan district is and the difference between our current structure and why we're moving to, or why we hope to move to the MPD structure. So MPDs may be created for the management, control, improvement, maintenance, and acquisition of parks, boulevards, and recreational facilities. And they're allowed to do so at a higher rate than the current park district structure that we operate under. And so, Okay, so advantages of the MPD, the boundary is flexible. And so it may include both the city and the county jurisdiction, but when we did our research and what I found out is that if we did it just within the city, because that was one idea that we thought of and talked with my board, was doing it possibly with just the city, but what that didn't allow us to do is then go outside of the city boundaries for funding. And so that's why we decided to keep our current boundary structure, because we're then taking that cost and spreading it over 41,000 people versus the city's population. And so it can be collaborative when it's that way. And so typically how you see cities that do that, and City of Olympia is a good example, they created their metropolitan district for the city, and those property taxes help subsidize that. And their council is built, their city council oversees the advisory board for the MPD. And so, but that's not the structure we're looking at because it's going out into county as well. And so that's why we're looking at it for an independent board. It can be done, as James said, by a simple majority, so it's 50+1 of the percentage of the votes of the district as a whole. And the levy rate can be up to 75 cents per 1,000 assessed value. And as James mentioned, we're only doing 25%. And so that difference is, right now as a special district, I could only go up to 60% of 1,000 assessed value if the voters approve that through a ballot measure. A big reason that we like this district structure better is when it looks at pro-rationing, we get more protection this way. And so what pro-rationing is when you look at it, it's a hierarchy of how the taxing districts within a county are allocated funding. And so if the county doesn't receive enough taxes to support all the taxing districts that they have, they start cutting funding in a hierarchical order. And so our district is usually one of the first to go because we're so low, we're at a level 4. Where as a metro district, we would be higher up on that and we would have more protection. Now, in the last 10 years, there was one time that Island County thought that they might have to pro-ration, just to give you an example. And so when they pro-ration, that means we wouldn't have gotten any funding that year. So that's why it's important to talk about. And the simple majority allows for the decision to be made effectively reflecting the will of the majority of the residents. So I've heard some people say, oh, well, you're losing control, but you're not really because you're still voting. It just more represents what your community actually wants. The supermajority that we've fought against or gone up against all these years, this last time that it failed back in 2017, that wasn't the first time the district saw failure in that levy rate. And so what ended up happening is we shut our doors. And at that point, that's when the community said, no, we still do want to fund this project. We just didn't realize that you needed that many votes, right? And they brought it back. And so that's what we want to stop in the future, is having to go to that extreme measure to shut the doors, because we lost all of that experience in lifeguards. We lost, when we brought it back, we had to do $80,000 in maintenance just to bring it up to where we could open it again, because it had sat for so long, not being maintained. And so that actually ended us costing more money than if we had maintained it accurately throughout the years. And so the other part of that is running for a levy, I'm sure you realize, is not free. And so those first two levy attempts that we failed, that was about $14,000 a piece. So if you look at how much money it cost us to get the levy open and going again, it was about $48,000 to get it back into place. And so a simple majority would stop that. Because when you look at the history of our votes, what you see is even when we fail, we still beat the simple majority. And so I think that that's telling us that our community does want that. So this is a side-by-side comparison, and the another part that we really like about this is the term of the commissioner, because it gives 6 years, and it's staggered. And what that allows for is a lot of comprehensive and future and strategic planning, where sometimes the commissioners coming on and off can, at the 4-year term and staggering that, you can see a lot of, oh, this is what we started, and then a next board came on and that changed. And so with the 6 years, that gives us more stability in that. The other thing I would like to point out is, as the election costs, there's no M&O levies once it's voted into place. Only if you want to go back for a levy lid lift, that would be above the 1%. If you look in the first line, ballot for maintenance and operation, after the first year, we can increase 1% via board resolution if more than 1% the ballot is needed. That's the levy lid lift. The great part about this, though, too, is that there is a motivation to not necessarily just spend that 1% every year if you don't need it. You can bank it. And so that might help us get through some other times, is years that we don't need it, we bank it so that the year that we do need it, maybe we don't have to go for a levy lid lift, we can just use our banked 1% that we hadn't used in past ones. So this is a map of our current boundaries. Green is North Whidbey Pool Park and Rec District. This was actually done through the Island County GIS department. And closely you can see the blue. I'm sorry if it's not as bright. The blue is the city of Oak Harbor, and the red indicates our property. So the top red piece is actually Clover Valley Park. So Clover Valley Park is actually out in the county's property. It's not within the school, or it's not within the city of Oak Harbor boundaries. And so the flexibility added to the legislation in 2022 for the MPD boundary allows for single jurisdiction, for example, within one city, or a multi-jurisdictional with portion of one or more in the jurisdiction, and this is what that looks like. So you can do it with more than one city, so if we wanted to, we could reach down to Coopville and say, hey, do you want to join us? Or we can do it just in the county as part of a county, not the whole county. And then this is what the city version would look like. It's within its own boundaries. And so those are the two types of governments that I touched on earlier, is the city council funding tool only. So what does that mean as a funding tool only? So typically the practice of when a city does it as an MPD, they're looking for additional funding that they're using to create other things. And so they already are supporting Parks and Rec through their taxes, but it's another funding source for them to gather. And so that's why they don't have that independent board. They have the city counter overseeing their advisory board. And that's why ours would be independent, is because we're going outside that city. The two types of service options are general purpose, everything parks and recreation, or special purpose, capital and M&O only. So why are we looking at it as a general purpose? Because when we started on this, when the board hired me, they already had their vision, and that was from all the people that they met and talked to during the last time that they tried to pass the levy. They went out and they talked to all these different groups, and that's what they came back from, is that they wanted to see more parks and recreation. They wanted to see recreation in pool parks and recreation, and they wanted us to find a way to stabilize this. How could we stabilize this? Which, so far, the boards, because they have transitioned through the time, the boards that I have worked with has not strayed from that vision. And so and that's what I love about this, is we're marching to a beat that was set by a board before I was even hired. And so MPDs may be proposed by local government resolution, which is what we're asking, because it's required that if you're in an area or your boundary is going to include a city, that you have to get a supporting documentation from the city. But the other choice is to go out through petition of 15% of the registered voters in the district boundaries, and for us it would be about 6,016 residents. So I have a note here. So to stabilize, I talked about that for the stabilization of our funding. The funding enables us to tackle significant maintenance, repair, and replacement requirements. Our next big renovation is our locker rooms at about $300K. And we have applied, and Representative Shavers is supporting our bid to the legislature for that funding through the community grant program. Can I give this to hand out? So what I'm about to hand out is the large capital improvements that we have made in this current levy cycle, just to the capital expenses. It does not include technological ones. And so in the last 6 years, we've knocked off about 830,000 K worth of capital projects, and this is only reflecting anything above 10,000 or above. And so we still have little ones like 5,000 when we repair our pumps, stuff like that. And so if anyone's been to the John Vander Zijt Memorial Pool lately, people are telling us it's the best they've ever seen it in the last 20 years. Yeah, so if you haven't had a chance to come by, come see what the funding's doing. And so that's another reason we think that this is important, because we've now put all that taxpayer money into this. Now we should keep it going. Our main aim is to be more than just a pool. We want to make sure that fun activities are a part. So I've heard some people mention, why now, why now? It's not really why now, it's just the perfect time for us, because our levy is ending, as Commissioner Morrow pointed out. And so we already have to rally the troops again, and it makes sense for us to rally the troops to support something that will be able to continue on for more than just 6 years. Another reason is it's always advisable to seek funding that doesn't have a sunset clause, because I literally have people going, what's going to happen? Is this program going to run after the levy? What is the, and so we have people that are fearful about what is going to happen next. Will the pool still be there? And the lack of stable funding is what led to some of the bigger problems in the past when we had to go reopen, is because they weren't able to fund how they needed to, because they were always saving that money to operate if the levy didn't pass. We have done our due diligence. We have started building up our reserves to help offset some of that in the future. And why is this a mutual benefit to the city? I don't want to keep preaching to the choir, but it makes sense, because we can help you fund some of your projects. We can help fund pickleball courts. We can help fund development of other park courses. So we know that people from all over the island are going to use those pickleball courts. So it makes sense that we spread that funding out to help pay for them or pay for other parks. in a program like, or in a structure like this. The MPD debt authority, that might worry people, right? Because the limited tax general obligation bond, we have the ability to do that without a vote, but we already have that ability to do that vote. It was something that we looked at when we were looking at redoing the roof and redoing the boiler project, because if you remember during COVID, the interest rates were so low that it didn't make sense to us if we could keep our funding to do other projects and we could bond it out and pay it back, that made more financial sense at the time. But they still made us want to put up, the bonding companies wanted us to put up almost as much as we were asking for in collateral. And that's ultimately why we didn't do it, because it didn't make sense for us to pay finance charges on money that we wanted to save for other projects, but then we couldn't if we tied it up through the bonding measure. But we've always had that ability, so I didn't want anybody to get nervous that that's something new. So this is one of the, people say, oh, well, we heard parks and rec districts aren't really a thing anymore. That's not actually accurate. There's actually a couple that have gone through the similar similar structure change that we are proposing right now. Penn Metropolitan Park District, otherwise known as Penn Met's Parks, went through the similar thing in 2004, and they had a history very similar to ours, where they had trouble passing levies on a regular basis. And so they have transitioned to this, and they have really grown and prospered and done everything that their board and their residents have wanted to do, and they are out at Gig Harbor Peninsula. If you look at Eastmont Metropolitan District, they're out of East Wenatchee, Washington. Bainbridge Island Metropolitan District went through the same thing. Pullman Metropolitan District out in Whitman County. Seaview Metropolitan District did this in 2003. And they've now expanded past their original border. And so everything that we researched and looked into says if we want to grow the way that our residents are wanting us to grow with programming and facilities, this is the next step in that process. So here are the side-by-side pros and cons that I've already discussed. But I do know, and I wanted to address, because when I was at the School District State of the Union, there was some board member, city council members, Council Marshall, I believe you were the one that kind of asked me this question, and I thought I would address it to everybody, that there has been other ideas put out there of what we could be, like a port district or a community facility. And so I just thought I would touch base on why those wouldn't work for us. Port districts you're allowed to form a port district to construct, acquire, and maintain harbor improvement, transfer, and terminal facilities, water transfer and terminal facility, air transfer or terminal facilities, other storage and handling facilities, to acquire and construct toll bridges, tunnels, beltline railways, to create industrial development districts, and serve as their governing bodies. We don't have any of that. And I do understand that there are port districts that do park and recreation, but I think that's in addition to what they're already providing in the term of port services. Community facility district. So there is no dollar limit for per 1,000 assessed value, and it does provide financing for community facilities and local, sub-regional, and regional facilities. But what you need is 100% of all property owners must approve the petition to create the district. 100%. Could you imagine if the city had to do anything by 100% of the voters? That seems insurmountable, especially in our political time. So there was also this idea passed about the Whidbey Island Metro District. And I have recently spoke with the South Whidbey Park and Rec Director, because their bond passed to open a pool, and so, they're coming and asking questions of us. And so we did cover this topic about an all-island wide. And he has recently met with Doug Coots, who was the former Park and Rec Director there. And they believe that the MPD is something that they would do, in his opinion, in 5 years down the line, but for South Whidbey. In his opinion, it doesn't make much sense for it to be an all island, because our two communities have a different makeup of residents and have different priorities. And so they don't, he researched all of his past documents and board comments, because they have made an MPD presentation to their board in the past. And nowhere in their board's research did he find anything that their board was interested in doing an island-wide. The other one was the limited purpose district. I attended the Washington State of Revenue tax levy training last year, 2 days. I thought I was going to be driven nuts in this, but I learned so much that I was very engaged the whole training, so I would recommend. It's free if you have anybody that wants to go to that. But in their definition, and I've brought it just in case anybody wants to look, I do not find a limited purpose district within the taxing levies that they present. But I do know that MPDs can be created for limited times to create capital projects. And so Bellingham is actually in the process of doing that right now. They have a park that they want to develop on one side of town, and they have created the MPD for that region of their town for their voters that have approved that. And only those voters within that service district of Bellingham are paying into that to create that park. And it's for about 20 years. So I don't know if that's what was meant by limited purpose district, but that is an option. But again, we're looking for something that doesn't have a sunset clause on it. And so that wouldn't work for us, is what our thoughts and opinions are. So hopefully that this has kind of answered some questions that I know have been floating around. Oops, I apologize. And I thought I would open it up for questions. We have done research by both attorney methods, and I did put a quote in there because, from Paul Simmons, and people might wonder, well, what does he have to do with any of this? I'm a new exec. I had never been an executive before, and so I joined a mentorship program where I got teamed up with other execs. And so on our very first meeting, we started talking about what were my goals, what did my board want to see done, and this is how the conversation got started and how I learned about metropolitan districts, and this was about 3.5 years ago. And so since then till now has been research and research and research, and we finished our research about this time last year, and we presented it to the board, and at that time, our board thought if we're going to get the people going again, let's do it for something like the MPD. So thank you for your time today. Can I answer any questions?
Great. So before we get to that, we've received 2 public comments on this item in advance of the meeting, and they will be displayed on the screen now. Great, thank you. And with that, I will now turn it over to the audience and see if there's anyone out in the audience this evening. Oh,
Yes, Mayor, we do have two individuals
thank
who
you.
signed up to
Should
speak.
have asked you first, I'm sorry.
It's quite all right. The first is Mr. Tyson.
Good evening again. My name is Mukunda Christian Tyson. I'm a 20-year Oak Harbor resident. Please bear with me if I repeat myself. I've just, retired from the military and decided to make Oak Harbor my home, much as many military people, Navy people have. In doing so, I had a family, 3 girls, that all have taken interest in many things over the years. One of those things that has stuck has been swimming. And to that end, I dove in to try and volunteer and help out in that endeavor wherever possible. At some point, I wound up becoming the president of the Blue Heron Booster Club, and I'm now a volunteer coach for the North Woodby Aquatic Club Blue Heron. Okay, that's my perspective. That's where I'm coming from. I've seen this Pool Parks and Rec district become quite divisive over the years. I've tried to keep it as cordial and as straightforward as possible. I think what's being proposed is something that I would hope you would support. We need to build partnerships here. Our community is growing leaps and bounds everywhere, and I think if you support it, you'll find that you'll create a better environment where everybody is working together from whatever angle or direction that they're coming from to get to the end product, which is, in my opinion, as has been evidenced here by much support, whether the pickleballers are here or not, a lot of recreation needs in our community at every age level. And I think we need to press forward with all of these options, as has been indicated, with pickleball or whatever agenda item was approved here. It was over $500,000 of spending to support the efforts to become a metropolitan pool district or parks district, whatever it is. It's a pool to me. I also know people that use the ball fields out there for AAU, so they all get used and they all have an impact. And the only comment I ever hear is, why can't we have more support, more funding, more community to get to where we need to go to represent Oak Harbor outside of our community in the best way possible with our youth? And that's my perspective. Please support this district.
Thank you for your comment.
Mayor, the second person who signed up to speak is Brett Arvidsson.
Good evening, I'm Brett Arvidsson. I'm speaking as a private citizen tonight. I don't play pickleball, but I do swim a lot. I'm a frequent user of the pool, and I see this pool as a community asset. It fills a lot of needs in the community. One is, I'm a lap swimmer. Kids' recreation and swim lessons are an important part. A lot of older people do physical therapy at the pool, and it's a major part of that. When the pool's closed down, you have a lot of older people that don't have that ability. So when I still hear about the last levee failing and people didn't have access to a pool for a long time. The military uses the pool both for recreation and training. I have the rescue swimmers swimming by me frequently in the morning. So I'm no stranger to complex issues here. I think you know that. I do feel this pool is an asset, and we should find a way to help make it work and get it stable funding, because it does provide a lot to us in the future. So listening to the thing, it's listening to the presentation, it's a long ways to go, but I do hope we can find a way to really make this work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else with us this evening that would, yes, go ahead, step on up and state your name, please.
Hi, I'm Amber Craven. I'm a citizen of Oak Harbor. I've lived here for 11 years. I didn't want to speak, but I'm going to. I am the head coach for the girls' high school swim team, so I spend a lot of time at the pool. I'm also an assistant coach for the boys' swim team, and then I'm also a volunteer for the Special Olympics, and I work with the swimmers that swim with Special Olympics. So I'm at the pool pretty much every day of the year. And I've seen just the amount of swimmers grow in the last 2 years. So for context, last year for boys season, we had about 16 boys that swam from the beginning to the end of the season. And this year we started with 44 and we ended with 40 boys swimming on the swim team. So the amount of kids as well as adults that use the pool is immense in this community. So I think that you guys should support this moving forward to support our community and to keep us growing. And yep, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, are there any other public comments at this time? You can go ahead and step on up and just state your name and.
My name is Tom Jones. Good evening again. I sent you all a letter with a proposal, which I assume you have. Excuse me. I sent that based on an article I read in Whitby News Times last week. Only on that. That's the only knowledge I have of this issue, and no other. So when I saw it and I saw the different options, I saw one that the district was looking at change, at a different structure, to provide for sustained viability. And I guess when I first saw that, and they listed 6 different options, none of those options included the city Parks and Rec Department operating those functions. And so I was like, I don't understand that. I still probably don't understand it. So I'm not knowledgeable of the district, how it operates, how it's funded. I have a better understanding of the city, but not as much as I should as far as where taxpayer dollars come from. So my recommendation was, to take a look at least consider as an option, to move those programs under the city Parks and Rec, which most city parks and recreation departments offer. They offer pools, they offer dog parks, they offer fields. That's a part of their business. So it's a different animal here. My bottom line is that we provide good services to our citizens, and that we finance those appropriately. So I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm not sure that splitting the baby and having 2 parks and recreation organizations for a community of our size doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But again, I don't have the whole background. I learned a lot tonight. Thank you. I guess, I was going to make further comments tonight, but I was kind of informed before the meeting starts that's really not an issue for tonight's agenda item. That tonight's agenda item is to find the district, the right answer for the district funding long-term. So I guess one of the questions I was going to ask was, what is the purpose? Is the purpose here to sustain an organization, the district, or is the purpose to sustain the service, which is a swimming pool and a dog park and other fields? And I have 2 different answers based on the answer to that question. If it's to attempt to sustain the organization of the North Whidbey Parks and Recreation Association, I have no further comment, because I don't understand the organization, I don't know the history of the organization, I don't know the funding. So I couldn't give you anything that might help. If the answer is to sustain the service, then I would have input. I have extensive background in merging recreation programs in the military, consolidating different departments, and there's been benefit to that in every opportunity that we've done that. There's been operational benefits, there's been financial benefits, and there's been customer convenience and customer benefit as well. So I won't say any more. I had more in here, but I wrote the letter, you read the letter. Maybe it's just not my time to be up here speaking about this, but I do think consideration needs to be given to a single Parks and Recreation Department for our side. Again, my bottom line is the best service we can provide our community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments from the public that is present here this evening? All right, hearing none, I will close. Oh, I'm so sorry, so sorry.
I'll be like my colleague or fellow citizen here, Tom. I'll dip in again and repeat. I really appreciated the presentation. I, too, learned a lot. And I agree, keeping the service sounds like the most important. We moved back to the community 5 years ago, so I wasn't here when the pool shut down, and I think that sounds extremely unfortunate for all the users. I woke up today thinking about the pool because I haven't been there, and that is part of an active lifestyle that I want to engage in again, although I'm no great swimmer. It's great exercise. So, but I will say I live outside city limits. So as a voter, I cannot vote on certain things, even though I did a lot of homework a while back about all of your positions. I went, oh yeah, I don't get to vote. But all the decisions that Oak Harbor City Council makes impacts a whole greater community. And that's what I would like to say. I mean, it sounds like this would be better. I too don't like the idea of, as an accountant, sunsetting of funds. Because here we're doing something and now we can't. And that just doesn't make good sense to me. And voter sensitivity and all of those things, we have other levies and things in this community. So to me, it sounds like a favorable proposition based on what I've heard tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, I will close the public comment period and turn it over to council for their questions and comments. Councilmember Wittgenstein.
Thank you for bringing this up. I just have a few comments. As one of those that have utilized that facility since '83, yeah, I'm that old. It's been a great asset to our community, and we want to make sure that asset continues to go. I believe that what you're really asking from us tonight is to get it on the ballot. That's what you're asking for us tonight. And I'm in favor of letting the voters make a decision on this process, totally in that regards. One of the things you did kind of not bring into the presentation is how the Board of Commissioners are elected. They're actually elected as a part of this ballot, right? And so the
Yes, sir.
current board members of North Woodby Pool Park and Drick would indeed have to run another campaign this primary season as well as potentially. So for those, because I've had people ask me about it, like, how do we have accountability in that regard, right? And so want to make it very clear, as this is a recorded and it's an opportunity for people that aren't here tonight to view and listen and hear, that if they're interested and they live in that district, North Woodby Park and Rec district area, that they too can also put their foot in the door to make sure that their Board of Commissioners is who they elect to be in that position. And that does include the city of Oak Harbor, right? So I wanted to make sure that was on the record so that we're all aware and everybody gets to be aware that this isn't just a funding source, this is a full restructure of the district, not in the parameters necessarily, but the potential for completely new board members. Not that the board members need to be replaced necessarily. It's just that it needs to be clear in that regards. Yeah, I was there when we tried to get the 60%, and a super majority is very hard. From this side of the seat, 60% is not my friend. As a citizen, sometimes the 60% majority is my friend, right? Protecting my wallet, my tax dollars and whatnot and stuff. So it just needs to be very clear that that's the regard. So as a representative of the council, I would be in support of allowing it to go to the voters. That's all I got.
Thank you, Councilmember Wittgenstein. So before we take any more comments or questions, do we need to make a motion to extend past 9 p.m.?
Mayor, I move to suspend the council rules and extend the meeting time till 9:30.
Second.
Any questions or comments on that? All right, all in favor, raise your right hand. Okay, that passes. Okay, now moving on to additional questions. Councilmember Wiesner.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I've got a whole lot of thoughts on this, but I'll try to be brief. Yeah, you're lucky, right? So I just want a little history, right? I mean, and I want to address Tom's comments. Certainly when the pool shut down, there was an agreement in the articles when the pool was incorporated and North Whidbey Parks and Recreation was created, that put the city in a position to take over the pool if in fact it failed. Because when it was all created, we didn't know how this was all going to work, quite frankly. We as a city did have to take a very hard look at when the pool closed. It was a valuable asset. It is about serving the community. It's not about protecting, in my mind, North Whidbey Parks and Rec. It is about serving the community. Although the community is a bigger whole, right? 22,000 residents or 22,000 in our city. We're serving 40-some thousand through North Whidbey Parks and Rec, and that's really what we looked at as a city. Quite frankly, we had 800,000 reasons for the city not to take on this additional task. The list you gave us, the $800,000 you spend on improvements over the last couple of years, because that $800,000 would have needed to be absorbed by the 22,000 citizens of Oak Harbor, not the 41,000 people of North Whidbey Parks and Recreation District. So the city of Oak Harbor, quite frankly, would have had to go out for an operation and maintenance levy in order to reopen the pool, or we would have had to scavenge the majority of the money we currently have in our parks fund to get to where North Whidbey Parks and Rec has gotten with the $800,000. So for us, I think it was a holistic look back when we did this. Do we put the burden of the future operation of that pool on the taxpayers of Oak Harbor, or do we put it on the greater whole, which is why, quite frankly, North Whidbey Parks and Recreation District was formed to begin with. We were looking at spreading the cost of building and maintaining and operating that pool over a larger area, the area that we felt as though the pool was going to serve, where, the city of Oak Harbor's taxation authority is stuck inside the city limits generated by real estate taxes, but of course we get the money from sales taxes as our two biggest incomes. So that's why the city didn't, try to go in and invoke that clause, even though it had expired. It was a clause that, we actually put in place for the first few years of operation, because again, we didn't know how this is all going to work. So in my mind, I really appreciate Tom's comments and the fact, are we doing this to save the entity, or are we doing this to help the service? And in my mind, it really doesn't have anything to do with the entity, and it really doesn't have anything to do about the city of Oak Harbor Parks versus North Whidbey Parks. This is about serving our community, and as council members, that's what we're up here to do. We're not up here to protect our turf. We're not up here to worry about who's on first, who's on second. We're here to serve the community and our constituents. So, in my mind, I'm like-minded to Councilmember Wittgenstein in the fact that what we're being asked here is, will the city endorse this being put forward to the vote of the people for the people to determine whether or not they want to continue having every 6 years to vote in a new M&O levy at a 60% supermajority, or do the people want to give the North Whidbey Parks and Recreation District that stable income that they can, bond out and it's predictable income. Currently right now, I'm assuming, Jay, if you were to bond out, you would have to bond within the amount of your M&O levy, because you wouldn't be able to service the bond outside the M&O levy, versus having the steady funding. You could bond out 10, 12, 13 years for a capital project, right? Which, quite frankly, we're a little bit envious of, right? Because this is what we're suffering with the marina, right? We would love to have a port district where we have steady funding, long-term, that we can bond against to take on that capital project. So we're kind of envious that you have the ability to do this. And quite frankly, the port districts, I know that was one of the subjects, we keep talking about maybe looking at a port district for a marina, but apparently I'm being told there hasn't been a successful port district formation in the state of Washington in many, many years. So I'm inclined to let it go before the voters. the question really in front of us, right, is do we send you guys out all summer long, spending your time gathering up 6,000 signatures, which quite honestly, I think they can get. I think if you sit in front of people and say, do you want to save the pool? Sign this, or do we want you to spend your time operating the pool, providing entertainment to the citizens of our community, and then letting the people vote on this? And my inclination is to not put you through the summer-long gathering of 6,000 signatures, and to put this out to the vote of the people and see if this is the type of funding that they want to provide to North Whidbey Park and Rec. Now, in closing my statement, I just want to say, let's never go to those dark days that we are at, right? Because the reality is, let's be honest here, we had some dark days with the pools. We had some issues internally that kind of fell out into the community, and there was some pushback, and you're right, you got the support over 50%, but there was enough people that were, upset about what was going on that you couldn't get it over the top. The fact that we still have control over placing those commissioners, and we have the ability to now re-elect commissioners, I don't really see this as, I don't really see a lot of negatives in it if the people of the community want to support it. And so there you go. That's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Wiesner. And next, Councilmember Stuckey.
I'm going to throw out a lot of random questions, so we're going to go on a journey here. I don't think that's going to happen. First of all, I'm definitely pro-pool. I go to the pool all the time. My wife just discovered water aerobics, and she'd be very angry with me if it shut down and had anything to do with me. I was looking at your budget. The most recent budget I could find online was 2021. I don't know if the other budget was somewhere else online. I couldn't find it. And I don't think me looking at 2021 would be really accurate based on the time we were in. That budget showed there's a whole lot more money as far as revenues goes coming from non-pool activities than pool activities. I can understand why based on the circumstances. Right now, can you give me a concept of how much of your revenue or how much of your time is dedicated to pool compared to the other stuff?
Are you asking about like in terms of recreation and like Clover Valley Park?
In general, I'm trying to figure out how much overlap there is between the City of Oak Harbor's Parks and Rec Department, or what it could be, and yourself, besides the pool.
So currently our park and rec programs, the recreation part of it, focus on youth sports activity. We're looking at doing an adult flag football league this spring. So we're starting to foray into adult sports as well. But in terms of the budget, the majority of the budget, over 85%, goes to pool operations. Clover Valley Park gets about between 10 and 20 grand, depending on the year and what they're asking for in terms of capital projects out there. But all the rec programs are self-sustaining. They don't take any money from the levy at this time, other than the admin fee that is based on a lane charge that we use that covers like administrative cost, but that's built into the cost of the program to recoup that for any time that we spend on that. I'm hoping that answers your question in terms. Okay.
Yeah. My other question is why now? But I'm going to do it from a different angle because you said why now. This year, you'd have to renew your levy, correct?
I'm sorry?
This year, you'd have to renew the levy.
Yes, sir.
This year, I apologize. Aren't you kind of under the gun? Like, why didn't you try for this last year in case it failed?
I think it was because the board decided that it was really a board decision and an input from other people before they were on the board, that if they were going to circle the wagon, so to speak, that they wanted to do it in the levy year so that people understood what that meant. Because if we can't pass the MPD at the simple majority, the 50% plus one, then we at least know what we have to do to pass the regular levy if we have to go there. And so they wanted to try that first so that we could be done with it at that time, and plus our research had ended about April of last year. And so that entailed attorney input, and so I'm sure you understand anytime that you're doing that, that's a lot of research. And so that was when our research finalized and when we made the presentation to our board and stakeholders.
Why haven't you, to kind of give yourself an idea, so we went through for a fire levy, right? And we did a lot of research before we even talked about, before it was on the ballot, to see if it would go through. We put out surveys, mailers. I haven't seen any of that. Why haven't you tried some sort of surveying, or maybe you have, and I'm just oblivious to it?
From what I understand, all of that happened prior to my arrival. So that's where that vision came in that our board and our new board members coming on had gone out and they met with all these community people. And so that vision is from what they gathered in all of that conversations that they had with all of those groups back then.
Question, this may be more for Brian if he's still here, or he's coming. So the land that the pool is on is city, correct?
That's correct.
And for the most part, the property around it is also city.
Correct.
Hypothetically speaking, could a community center fit with some configuration on that land?
Yes.
I look at my hometown of Squim, and we have the SARC, the Squim Aquatic Recreation Center. Loved it, grew up there, went there all the time. And it was essentially a community center that was pool, pickleball, I don't think pickleball was around, it was racquetball, tennis, gym, a little meeting place. Is something like that feasible? What I'm trying to get at is if this MPD goes through, do these sort of ideas of merging departments in some fashion, does this make it more difficult in the future if this goes through?
I don't know that I even want to speak to that. I don't know. What exactly are you asking?
I guess what I'm getting to is, I mean, thinking a little farther term, and I know that what's on this is just, do we put this on the ballot? But I need a little more context here to make sure that happens. I mean, here we have property that's city property, and we're talking about a potential community center at some point. It sounds like that community center could possibly go on that land. Now, is that harder to do if it's MPD, or is North Whidbey Parks and Rec, could they be absorbed, or whatever that looks like, and maybe absorbed isn't the best word, is it easier to do that before the MPD, or if this MPD goes through, is it just not possible for us to combine resources?
If you're asking if it would be difficult to build a community center if they were to become a metro district,
Correct.
I don't know that that really has any effect or bearing at all. In fact, it might provide better, like Jay had mentioned, partnership opportunities to support. Maybe it's a joint effort, and they program part of that facility or something like that if the city were to build it.
Do we have the ability, let's assume that this does not go through. I guess I'm going to go back to Jay and I'll go back. Let's assume this does not go through. Your levy does not go through. What does that mean?
It means that we try to operate as long as we possibly can. We shut the doors and then we go at it again with the voters like we've done in the past, because once the doors shut, I think that was the precipice for the community to be like, whoa, hey, wait a minute, we didn't know that was gonna happen. Because from what I understand, part of the misconception was that the city was already funding the pool. And so when the doors shut, that kind of was the precipice that said, oh no, they're not doing that. And so I think that would just put us right back where we go. And then what does that happen? So we're still currently building up the lifeguards that we lost when we shut those doors. And so we'll go back to that again. We'll go back to everything stopping and having to rebuild from scratch. So we have a basketball league right now that has 320 kids in it.
Sure.
If that doesn't pass by next year, what happens with that league, right? We'd have to keep trying to operate it as much as we could. And that means that if we did the league, that means, it'd have to be at a higher rate because now there's no levy supporting any of the admin fee. And so, yeah.
Sure.
But to answer your original question, it would help you with an MPD to create a community center, because we can help you bond from other areas outside of City of Oak Harbor that you can't access as your own MPD. So even if the city were to create its own MPD, they can't go beyond it for that property tax, where we can and then share that funding with you.
And that's the major appeal for me, obviously, is that you can go outside of city and we can't. I did you listed, I think, 5 different MPDs. I did call all of them today, with the exception of Fall City, because their phone number wasn't easily listed. To kind of give an idea, Peninsula, they get taxes just around the city. They don't tax in the city, just around it. The city has a very small Parks and Rec department. They don't do a whole lot. Eastmont, the city has no Parks and Rec department. Bainbridge, the city has no Parks and Rec department. Pullman taxes the city and the surrounding area, but reports to the city council, so it's kind of under the purview of the city. Des Moines, which kind of would be the most similar to us, they're just the pool. So they have their own taxing, but they're just the pool. What I didn't see was 2 totally viable Parks and Rec districts, a city within a metropolitan district, both of them being viable and operating. I'm just going by the ones that you listed. To Councilman Weezer's point, you're talking about, we're not competing against each other or something like that. And I understand the mentality, but let's be honest, a lot of people think we're one and the same. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I talk to somebody and they don't realize what city, what's North Whidbey Pool Parks and Rec. So there's some confusion there. I would love to see a way of it being joint. Is that, from your perspective, and I'd love from Brian's, is that ever a possibility that it could just be one Parks and Rec department?
Well, and that's and I've talked with individually a bunch of council members. All that would take is us to sit down, make sure that we wouldn't be breaking any laws. I don't think so, based on the research that we have done, and to sit down and with the board, hammer out what that could look like, right? Brian and I, we're not the ones that make those decisions, so that really, that direction needs to come from the commissioners and the council working together. But do I think it's possible? Yes, because I have that, anything's possible, we just have to find the solution. So as long as it's not breaking any laws, yes, I think it's completely doable.
Same question for Brian. Is it possible for them to be one department as opposed to 2 operating simultaneously?
I think it is possible. The logistics of that, as far as, like Jay mentioned, city boundary, outside city boundary, as far as jurisdictional authorization, was something we'd have to look at. I can give you an example of in Colorado, where I just came from. I know that the city of Arvada and the Apex Parks and Recreation District operate both within the same city, and have kind of a joint partnership format. That's an example that you could look at. It would be just a different animal. I guess the district would then become a funding mechanism for the city. It wouldn't really go the other direction. So something that, like Jay said, I think the policymakers would have to have a discussion and make a decision in the direction they want to go.
Well, there would have to be an interlocal agreement that would have to be agreed upon as well. So,
Eventually, that's kind of what I would like. You're talking about basketball. Well, what if we decide to do basketball? Well, it seems like there could be a net savings if it was just one basketball, but I understand that's not what's on here. So to wrap it up, because that was one of the options that staff gave us, but obviously that takes policymakers. It's not like we could just say, oh, let's go with option 3, which is be one department. I get that. So I guess my last thought is, we need the pool to continue. I don't want to see shut down. I'm not a big fan of this initial MPD not requiring 60%, at least for the initial. I don't like this just 50%. That if we're just looking at just the topic of an MPD, I don't particularly like the fact that it's just at a 50% and not a 60. But I do understand not having to keep going back to the voter. So I'm going back and forth on it. We'll put it that way.
Thank you, Councilmember Stuckey. Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to echo Councilmember Stuckey's comments in that in the conversations I've had with people about this, the underlying message I'm getting is collaboration. We need to have that collaboration with North Whidbey Pool Parks and Rec, with the school district, with our own Parks and Rec department, because we have a number of issues. We have fields that we're trying to identify how to fix those. and we're all serving the same general idea, and that is we want to provide opportunities for the community, and so that is paramount for me is that we get together and we have these conversations. We work together because I don't see the need for us to do basketball if you're doing basketball. Conversely, if we're doing a program, I don't see the need for you to do that program. But we can't know what's happening unless we're having these conversations, unless we all come to the table and communicate that. And that, unfortunately, have not seen that, and maybe I'm missing something, but I've not seen it, and I would love to see that. You know, I've been on the Oak Harbor Parks and Rec Commission now for a little while. I've been on council for a couple of years, and I've really not seen that collaborative effort. And that's really bottom line for me is that's what's most important if we truly want to get things done. We have a big, diverse community. Brian can't do everything. You can't do everything. The school district can't do everything. They can't provide everything. And we're lacking in resources, and we're lacking in opportunities that we could be fulfilling if we were working together. And so I don't know how to make that happen, but that's really what I'm encouraging, you know, with you and with Brian and with the school district is let's come to the table, our boards, if we can get Pool Park and Rec Board to sit with council one day, however we make that happen, that's how we're going to really move things forward. I'm all individually always in favor of the idea if there's a taxation or there's additional monies being spent by the community that they have a say in that's their say. And so before I get to the couple of questions that I have, I'm going to ask a question of our city attorney, and that, you know, Hillary, this resolution was presented to us, and from what I understand, we haven't made any modifications. Have you had a chance to review it, and are you good with the language within that resolution?
I did have an opportunity to review it.
We're not telling people how to vote. We're just simply saying you have a right to vote on this. So, I've been kind of accused of that as well, as that, well, you're endorsing it. No, we're just saying that the people can vote on it. It's not an actual endorsement, because as this governing body, that I don't think that's necessarily what in our best interest is. We just putting it to the people. As our finance director, Mr. Goldman, can attest, I'm not the best at math, and so I just have a question on the funding. Now, you mentioned that you're currently at a 0.20. You're requesting to go to a 0.25, but you can go up by 1% each year. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's actually different ways to structure it, but we're structuring it most familiar to what the voters have already seen. There are some districts, like the city of Olympia, that initially on their ballot, they started it at 75%, and based on their need, when they turn in their budget, their county goes, okay, well, this is what you actually need. And so I think even though their initial ballot said that they could go up to the 75% of 1,000 assessed value, they're only currently collecting 54% in their current cycle. We did the version that was most recognizable to our community.
See, when you start talking percents and cents, I lose it there. So it's 54 cents per 1,000 is what the example that you just presented, correct?
Yes, that the
Okay.
city of Olympia does.
Okay. Right now, that 20 cents per 1,000, is that fixed for the entire 6-year M&O, or can you go up? So you're fixed at that 20 cents.
I can go up according to the IPD, which the IPD allows us to collect our banked capacity, kind of similar to the 1% that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The IPD allows us to collect the bank capacity for like new construction, or when say there's a state facility within your district and that has been appraised at a higher value, you can then go and claim that at that 1%. So I think like last year, that 1% was about $9,000 for us. I can get you the exact number of what it was because it's in our levy documentation, but I can send that to you.
So I guess what I'm really trying to understand is how much can you tack on to the taxpayer without them being able to vote on it? And that's my big concern is anytime we talk about taxation is how much can you tack on potentially to a voter without their approval?
So like I said, with the IPD, currently it's that 1% of the IPD. So what that equivalated to, so yes, we started at 20% back in 2019, but currently, and nobody at the Department of the State of Revenue could explain this to me in the levy class, but we're only collecting 17 cents per 1,000 assessed value. It has something to do with how that value changes within the department. So we were authorized in that first year, we collected 20 cents on the 1,000 assessed, but it's dropped every year, which is why they allow the 1% of the IPD. If we switch to the new model, we'll still be able to do that 1,000 MPD plus a 1% increase by resolution. And so what that would look like now currently, we currently get about 909,000, I think, this year.
I can maybe help out a little bit.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So I was a little hesitant to say anything because Washington State has dozens and dozens of special districts, and they have different rules than cities. So I didn't really want to speak because I'm not an expert on metropolitan districts or parks districts, but if it's anything like the way cities work, and it does sound more and more like how cities work, what will happen is they'll set, with the voters, they'll set a rate, let's say it's 0.2 per thousand. And as assessed values go up, assuming that they continue to go up, then what will happen is that assessed rate will go down. And what'll happen, and basically, whatever dollar amount they're collecting off that 0.2, I have no idea what the dollar amount will be, but let's say it's $1 million, just to round something simple. They'll be able to collect up to 1% more of that $1 million. So they'll be able to go up to $1,010,000. And the property appraiser over at the county will calculate what that actual rate will be. So to answer your question, Councilmember Marshall, if it's anything like the way the cities work, they're not going to be able to just jack up the taxes to a large rate. They'll have to go to the voters and do something similar to a levy lid lift.
Yes,
if levy lid lifts apply to the special district, which I'm not 100%, but if it's anything like a city, their limit will be that 1%, plus new construction, which we all get, so, yeah. Does that help, or?
It does.
Oh,
I
okay.
appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you. So I guess my last question then is, right now you're on an M&O levy that's every 6 years. So the voters really, if they decided, hey, we don't want to fund this pool anymore, that they do that with their vote. Is there a way for them to repeal this at some point? If they get tired of paying this, how does that work?
The same way that they would have to get a petition signed to get it on the ballot, and then it would go to vote.
Okay.
As I understand.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilmember Marshall. Any other comment or question, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. Looking at our agenda, I see that we still have an executive session after this, so with that, I would move to suspend council rules and extend the meeting until 10 p.m.
Second.
No takers?
All in favor, raise your hand.
What time is Mod?
All right.
They close at 10. I'm already.
Oh, man, sorry, buddy.
All right, any,
Okay, sorry, now,
okay.
Delivered here.
so I've got, on this, I think it's brilliant, honestly. The restructuring, the way it's set up is, from your perspective, absolutely a no-brainer. It's brilliant, and I get it. I'm a little uncomfortable with the timing. I guess most of my questions were answered in terms of, what's the contingency plan if it fails, and what would the impact of waiting to put this on next year's ballot be? You would just be using reserves to operate at a minimal. level?
So we have reserves, but our reserves right now are 52,000. So that wouldn't be enough to sustain us through if we don't do it now.
Okay. Yeah, just from where I'm sitting, it seems like it would have made a lot more sense to have done this last year. What is your drop dead date for getting something on the ballot? May something?
So we're shooting for the August primary.
August primary, okay. I have so many questions, and I just personally would like more time to get some of those questions answered. But you know, we just got funding for a feasibility study, and I think the feasibility study for the community center is going to give us a ton of information that we don't already have, and I'm assuming that it will also include potential funding sources, and you know, really itemize what the community needs. I would really like to have that information going forward with this. I mean, you guys you do this every 6 years, and so you know all too well how you have to be strategic when you're talking about ballot measures. And you know, we're keenly aware that we just passed a transportation benefit district. We just passed a bond to build a new fire station. We know that the school is going to be going to the voters with more requests. There's lots of stuff kind of coming down the pipe, and you know, people they have tax fatigue, and you know, I mean, I get it, and I'm thinking, like Councilor Stuckey, you know, kind of long term into the future, what will this tax fatigue and yet another ballot measure do for you know, like our chances of passing a port district? You ask for people for another $25 a year this year, and a few years down, we ask for people for another $20 a year, and it adds up. And I realize that I'm getting hung up on like a potential future hypothetical. I get that. But the port district is just always there in the back of my mind, because that would give us access to millions, like tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars that we don't currently have any access to. And so that's why it's like so heavy in the back of my mind, that I don't want to do anything that would sabotage, you know, our potential to pass something like that. And I don't want to do anything that would sabotage the school's potential of passing whatever they need to pass. And I'm really aware that a win for the school district, or a win for the city, or a win for the North Whidbey Parks and Rec is a win for the whole community, because the assets are so important. I guess to summarize, my biggest concern would be how putting something like this on the ballot might affect other potential opportunities and or things that need to also show up on the ballot in the near future. I'm guessing you have done some kind of research about who's going to be asking for what in the future. Do you have thoughts?
So we met with Island County Commissioners, and so we did kind of look at what elections would be good.
Right.
And so that's kind of why we ended up where we did. We also have talked with the school superintendent about, you know, our potential and what we were looking at, and the idea of the community center being tacked on to the side of the pool, because it is true that the property is owned by the city from the pool to Whidbey, but on the other side of us is school district property. And so, yeah, part of it. And so there was those conversations, and because they were going for their bond last year, and then the big mayoral election, I think that probably, and I can't speak necessarily for all of our commissioners, but I do know that some of that weighed heavily on some of the commissioners. And so I think that was part of their reasoning. In my opinion, that probably weighed in on why we're doing it now, because as we understand, the school district doesn't have anything huge coming up in the primary. Yes, we do have an IGA with them, but that we created that as a way to use each other's facilities at a time when the city of Oak Harbor didn't really have a park and rec department at all. Mm-hmm. And so at the time, we did talk with the person that was in that seat, and there was a different plan in mind, which is why we have been going along the path that we have gone. We're just at a point now where we don't have a choice. And so we need to continue the funding, and so that's, I think, ultimately why it was set now, is we didn't want to get involved with what was happening with the mayoral race in the past and the school bond, so I think that was a big reason why they didn't do it back last year. But again, that's an opinion of mine.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. I'm, based on my previous rambling, I'm wondering if David Goldman or Sabrina Combs have any thoughts that they'd like to chime in with.
We will follow the will of the council.
That's a cop-out. Our least favorite response.
And he got right up on the
As will I.
But do you have an opinion?
Not at all. I just want to say that.
So that's a no then. That's a no, we don't have an opinion.
I think our staff has talked, Brian's talked a lot about this. I think there's a lot of information coming out there, and I've talked with the mayor about this. There are a lot of different items coming to the community. This is a tough discussion because of that. So I think there's a lot of factors here to consider. We just wanted to make sure that this was available for you to talk about as a council so that you can consider those options. And so that's what, it's in your hands in the sense of the will of our community members and your constituents.
That was very diplomatic.
Do you have a math problem you'd like solved? Or?
Not a specific one, no. Yeah, I don't want there to be any perception that I don't love this idea, because I do. I love it. I think it's brilliant. I just, I'm hung up on the potential future hypothetical, what that's going to mean for every other entity that's going to be asking voters for money in the next, however many years. I can't imagine what it's like to try to operate where every 6 years you don't know if you're going to be getting your funding. That's not an enviable position at all, and it would be great if we could fix that, for sure. So, obvious, as Councilmember Marshall said, we're not being asked to endorse anything or make anything happen tonight other than just send it to the voters and see what they say. So, in light of just tonight's question, then, ultimately, the voters are going to have the final say either way, no matter who asks for what. And so, I will support this. I do have a lot of questions about what kinds of other things we're going to be asking voters for in the next few years. So I guess we'll see how it goes. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, with that, I would entertain a motion. Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to support a resolution for the North Woodbury Pool Park and Recreation District to form a Metropolitan Park District by a vote of the people.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Yes, Councilmember
Mayor,
Hopper.
may I? Given my dual role with both entities and fully understanding public perception, I will be recusing on this vote.
Great, thank you. Any other comments or discussion? All right, with that, everyone in favor, raise your right hand. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, testing my math skills, 5 yeses and all opposed, 1 no. So it passes. With that, congratulations. Thank you. Yes.
And I'll be reaching out to set up a workshop.
Great. All right, at this time, the council will move into an executive session per RCW 4230-110-1I to discuss with legal counsel litigation or potential litigation. The estimated duration of the executive session is 15 minutes.
15 minutes?
Yes.
You have to say no action to follow.
No action to follow. Thank you, Hillary. We go. We have now come out of executive session. No action will be taken at this time regarding the matter discussed.
Move
There
to
will-
adjourn?
Okay. All in favor? We're adjourned.